Hey, welcome. We're going to officially call ourselves to order. We have an interesting day here today with some of our little mayors that we'll talk about here later. But before we do that, we are going to go ahead and open up with our invocation, and then after that, we'll do the pledges. So I don't see him, but I may be. I am looking right at him. So we have Pastor Matt Spears. If you don't mind coming up. Would you guys please rise as we say the prayer?
First off, I just want to say thank you guys. It's an honor to be here. And I want to publicly say thank you for what you're doing, for loving our city, and for serving and laying down your lives for the benefit of this community. It's amazing to watch you guys step into this role. Let's pray. Father God, first and foremost, we recognize you, Lord, and we honor you as the supreme ruler and controller of all things. God, we thank you so much for the blessing of God on this beautiful city that we call home. God, thank you for your provision. God, thank you for the way that you are showing up and manifesting your glory in our city. We don't take that for granted, and we say thank you for that. Lord, we pray for the spirit of wisdom and discernment. God, we pray for the spirit of unity to rest in this place. Again, we acknowledge you and we invite you to come. Fill this room with your presence. God, I pray that there would be a sense of peace and calm about the decisions that need to be made today. Lord, I pray for wisdom to be upon Mr. Mayor, the council members, as they have a conversation and make decisions on behalf of this beautiful community. God, that you would fill them with your spirit of discernment and wisdom to lead and to execute the vision of the city. We commit this entire session to you. And again, we pray that your presence would invade this space. God, I pray that you would silence distraction and discord, and that peace would rule and reign in this place. In the mighty name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you. If you guys would join with me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the Texas flag, please. Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, guys. Please be seated. So we have a couple proclamations here today, and I would ask Miss Johnny, I haven't seen those, so they're here? Okay. If I could, I'm going to ask our new Mayor Pro Tem here, Tom Sherlin, to read National Public Works Week, and then I will ask Councilman Simpson if you would read the Older Americans Month. No reason why I did that. Just all went to the other right side of the board here today.
I'll take that as a compliment, Mayor.
And then after that, we are going to do our previous council meeting. We had our special mayor that was here with us. And so what we had wanted to do with JA BizTown was do all the little mayors together. And to facilitate everything that we needed to, we were able to do it in two. So we have a special just honor here to have our little mayors and JA BizTown here with us again today. So we're going to come down there and we'll read these proclamations. And then after that, we'll do JA BizTown, take a photo, and then come back up here on the dais. So council, if you'll join me downstairs, please.
City of Amarillo City Council proclamation. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and service that are vital importance to sustainability and resilient community, and to public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the city of Amarillo. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public work professionals who are employees at all levels of government and private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, solid waste systems, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas, in the public interest of the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Amarillo, Texas, to gain knowledge and of the maintenance of and ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2024 marks the 64th Annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, we, Mayor and City Council of the City of Amarillo, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2024 as National Public Works Week. Thank you.
And if we could have a Donnie Hooper come up, and if you've got any of your staff.
We've got them up there. Come on.
We would love it if you wouldn't mind standing.
So there's a lot of people that are on their way up here. Yeah, that's fine. I got some notes I need to make sure that I say everything, but I'll let everybody get in their spot. All right, so I want to accept this proclamation on behalf of Public Works. Behind me is the people that are the superintendents of Public Works. They're the superintendents of utilities, assistant superintendents, and also the admin supervisors that are here. We have never done this before. We had the admin supervisory staff, and we all know in Public Works that they're actually the ones that run Public Works, so we want to make sure and recognize them here today. They do a fantastic job. This group right here represents over 400 or close to 400 employees in Public Works, over 200 employees in our utilities department. Utilities doesn't actually fall under the structure of Public Works at the City of Amarillo, but they are public-facing entities that are recognized as Public Works as well, so we want to make sure that we recognize them here today. Just so you know what they're responsible for: maintaining over 1,000 miles of streets, over 500 miles of alleys, 70,000 residential solid waste customers, 18,000 residential dumpsters plus commercial dumpsters. They process over 300,000 tons of waste annually at our landfill, which is a lot. 272 signalized intersections, 2,100 streetlights, 3,700 miles of striping, our pumping operations at 5 playa lakes, including 7 pump stations, 160 miles of storm sewers, 1,100 pieces of equipment that we maintain, 1,200 miles of water lines, over 1,000 miles of sewer lines, and over 200 miles of transmission lines. That's just to say the main things that they take care of on a daily basis. And we know that, thank you, Deepak, yeah. And the last thing I'll say is the reason that I got into Public Works is because it's a way to serve everybody in your community. We touch the lives of everyone. Every day when you wake up, you're either brushing your teeth with the water, you're taking out your trash every day, you're driving on the road, so on and so forth. So proud to be a part of this organization, and I think the round of applause belongs to the people that are here behind us. Thank you.
For our next proclamation, I would go ahead and ask if there's anybody here from the Area Agency on Aging. Would you come up here and go ahead and stand? And so as I read this,
people in the audience will get a better understanding of who's helping locally in this mission. Whereas Amarillo includes a growing number of older Americans who contribute their time, wisdom, and experience to our community, and whereas communities benefit when people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds have the opportunity to participate and live independently, and whereas those in Amarillo recognize the need to create a community that offers services and support older adults may need to make choices about how they age, and whereas Amarillans can work to build an even better community for our older residents by share facts about the social connection and how it contributes to overall well-being, promote resources that help older adults engage, like community events and social clubs, connect older adults with local services such as transportation that can help them overcome obstacles to achieving or maintaining meaningful relationships, and encourage partners to host a connection-centric event or program focused on older adult mentors to youth, peer-to-peer support, or similar efforts. Now, therefore, we, Mayor and City Council of the City of Amarillo, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2024 as Older Americans Month in Amarillo and urge every resident to celebrate our older citizens, help to create an inclusive society, and accept the challenge of flexible thinking around aging.
Hi, so we're with the Area Agency on Aging, and our mission is to promote dignity, quality of life to our older adults and their caregivers, and that's what this event is for. So the theme is powered by connection, and it's recognizing meaningful connection or meaningful relationships and socialization, how that affects our older adults' mental well-being. So this event is to combat that loneliness and isolation. So if anybody wants to join, come join us May 24th.
Ms. Joy, did you have anything you wanted to coordinate as far as like lining them up, or you okay with just letting them come up? Mm-hmm. Do you mind? You want to handle them? Okay. Okay. Ms. Watson, would you mind coming back up here? I did this to you last time as well. So we get to do what we did a little bit. So some of you guys are familiar with JA BizTown, which was appropriately retitled BizTown by some of the elementary students. And so Miss Dana Watson and some of her crew are here. It's a fantastic opportunity for our community to plug in with our elementary schools. So fifth graders from every elementary school were invited. Yep. So you had 36 or 38 total. 36 elementary schools all went for an opportunity at JA BizTown, and they were little mayors. They were CEOs of United, of Street Toyota, Toot and Totem, different businesses across the Amarillo landscape. And so they got to go and interact and transact with each other and learn and lead their little communities. So isn't that right, Mayor Luke? So this was an opportunity for me. I went over there one time and I said, you know what, I'm going to come back and I'm going to try to meet as many of these little mayors as I can. And you know, just give me an opportunity to go over there and shake their hand. And so I got to meet several of you guys and got to see you work. And so we thought it'd be cool to finish the end of the year. So don't worry, we're not doing this every council meeting with new little mayors coming up. This is the kind of grand finale. And we just wanted to honor you guys, give you an opportunity to come to a council meeting. I think it's really cool that you get to be here. You get to see what it's like and be in the council chamber. And then we also had an essay contest. So competition brings out the best in all of us. And so Riley, what is your last name? Stowers. So Miss Riley Stowers won our essay, and The prize for that was getting to go up on the dais, sit in the mayor's chair if you choose to, only if you want to. And then maybe we could let you gavel us into public comment. And then we'll move forward with our business meeting here today. But just wanted to give a round of applause one more time, shine a spotlight on BizTown and all of these future leaders of Amarillo. Would you join me in a round of applause for them? We have some certificates that we're going to hand out as you guys come up, but I was going to see if Mrs. Watson had anything else she'd like to say quickly.
I think you covered it, and I know you're trying to move quickly. Thank you for coming. Thank you to our families that came with your little mayor today to support them, and by extension, our city and JA. Thank you to our city, Cole and Joy, for being so wonderful to work with and giving of their time. I know it's costly, so thank you for coming. And if you haven't seen BizTown at Amtech Career Academy, you should take some time out. Come check it out. Your tax dollars are not paying for it. Your private donors are. In our city, we're blessed with great people. So thank y'all for being here today.
So thank you. So if I could, if everyone, Riley, if you don't mind coming up first, and we're going to hand you a certificate. We want to take a few photos as you guys come up. And then as we have our young mayors coming up, if any parents, grandparents, friends, and family are coming, please come up here and we'll do a photo together. Perfect. Ms. Riley, flip that open for me real quick. There we go. Hold it like that. Can we get a few photos with your mom and dad? Hold that one more time. You guys, y'all get in the photo. We'll send it to you. How are you, Lieutenant?
Very good. How are you, sir?
Doing good. Perfect. Can you, good? Okay, ready? Thank you, guys. Now, here. We go ahead and have you stand right over here. We'll bring all of our other ones up. How are you, Mayor? You don't mind jumping in right up there? Mayor Lee, how are you, sir? Good to see you. Hey, how are you, sir? How are you? Is that everybody, Joey? Can everybody kind of scoot in here? We'll center it up with the little mayors and we'll take a photo, and then we'll have all friends and family come up. You guys go ahead and squeeze all the way down. Come this way, mayors, if you want. Perfect.
Everybody ready? Yeah. Okay. Here we go. 3, 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Hey, thank you guys so much. One more round of applause. Would you like to come up on the dais? Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Mayor Riley, if you'll sit right there. Go ahead and scoot that up there. It's a little nerve-wracking, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so here's what you're going to do, okay? You're going to say, our next order of business is public comment. And do you want to hit the gavel or no?
Sure.
Okay, just say, our next order of business is public comment, hit the gavel, and then say, Miss City Secretary, we're ready.
Okay.
Okay, you're up.
All right.
Right into that microphone. Our next order of business is public comment.
Our next order of business is public comment. Miss City Secretary, we're ready.
That was perfect. Mayor Riley, great job. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor. They'll let you out right there. Will you hand that to David? Hey, thank you, mayors and parents. Really appreciate you guys facilitating all that and getting everybody here. All right, like the mayor said, we have public comment. I know we have several people signed up for this today, so Ms. Secretary, if you don't mind reading us into our public comment language.
Thank you for participating in today's City Council meeting. Your input and your opinions are important to us, and we are glad you are here to share them. At each posted meeting, we invite our fellow community members to address City Council regarding posted agenda items. Every speaker has 3 minutes to address the Council. At the end of 2.5 minutes, a warning beep will sound to alert you that you have 30 seconds left to wrap up your thoughts. We ask that you stay within the 3 minutes allotted. Speakers are asked to limit your comments to items on the posted agenda. We have several public hearings on the agenda today. If you are here to speak on an item with a public hearing, we ask that you make your comments during public address or the public hearing, but not both, in order to keep accurate records. It is your decision which you want to speak during. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and whether or not you live within the Amarillo city limits. Please state if you are speaking for, on, or against the agenda item. Thank you again for being here today to share your thoughts with the City Council. At this time, I will invite Cindy Bulla, who is here, and up next will be Noah Dawson.
Afternoon, Miss Cindy.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and council members, distinguished council members, thank you. My name is Cindy Bulla. I live in the West Cliff area of Amarillo, Texas, and I'm a very proud longtime citizen. I'm here today to voice my support for the Vision 2045 comprehensive plan that's being submitted and presented to the council. I am grateful for your the opportunity that you all provided for me to serve on that citizens group that helped write the plan. I also am a commissioner member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Today, I want to tell you the reason I support the plan. There's a lot of reasons why I support it that are because of what it does, but maybe the most important reason I support it is because of what it doesn't do. I'm super excited to share with my fellow citizens that this plan provides a very high level of simple guidance, and it was devised with a tremendously high level of citizen input. It does not force any type of government onto the citizens. It allows the citizens from the ground up to help plan and work on their communities. It's really great. In the private sector, and I know many of you spend a lot of time in the private sector, so we know that a strategic plan in a corporate world drives the budget, and then the budget drives the resources. Well, in the public world, that comprehensive plan serves an even higher purpose than that strategic plan. It just acts as a guideline so that you, as our city governors, can help guide the growth of the city for the betterment of all the citizens, but that any changes that arise out of that come from the citizens, and that's what's unique about this particular plan. It doesn't say from now on we're going to do this and this goes here and that goes there. It says, and it provides for a pathway for citizens to have input on how their particular neighborhoods grow. And so I urge you to consider approving it. I think it is the best of all worlds in an area where we enjoy citizen-led governance and we participate in that. I think it is the perfect solution. The next step, if you approve this, will be to bring some zoning opportunities, not changes, not forced anything, just opportunities, so that those neighborhoods who want their communities to be planned to include some commercial opportunities and some walkable opportunities, they can come to you and ask for that privilege. You don't go to them and tell them what you're going to do. They get to come to you and ask for it. It is, I'm very proud of the work we did, and I urge the council to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bola.
While we wait on Mr. Dawson, up next will be Claudia Stravato.
I'm also here to talk a little bit about the city plan. As you know, this council appointed me to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and recently I voted in favor also of recommending this new city plan. And a big reason why I voted in favor of it, I'll tell y'all, when y'all put me on the Planning and Zoning Commission, one of my big worries was I knew we had the city plan coming up. And city plans typically, and the trend has been in many communities and many cities, to be more restrictive, to be further in violation of private property rights. And as many people in the city know, I am probably one of the loudest and most obnoxious defenders of private property rights in the city. And I would put my record in defending private property rights against anyone else's in this city. I was very pleasantly surprised when I read the draft city plan that it does not seek to increase government red tape. It actually, unlike many other city plans, unlike the direction that many other cities are heading, actually reduces a lot of that red tape. So that's probably the biggest reason why I support it. And functionally, what does that actually look like? I think a perfect example is actually later on this agenda when comparing it with the current city plan, item 11B. We have a rezoning coming up. And if you look at the analysis that was done on that, there's a bit that talks about whether or not it's in line with the future land use map under the current city plan. And it notes that it's not in line with the traditional neighborhood unit concept that much of the city is based around, because that's been what has been pushed by previous city plans. Now, thankfully, we do have an excellent staff in this planning department that's able to recognize that, well, this area that rezoning is going through hasn't developed kind of in line with that. But still, we're having to do these workarounds and having to say, well, it's not really in line with the current city plan, and so we're kind of making exceptions here and there. And I wouldn't go so far as say that the way that we're currently kind of having to do it is arbitrary, but it can very much look like that from the perspective of people that are trying to get these things go through. Sometimes it'll look like it's real easy to get it through. Sometimes it's not, especially if you're wanting to experiment and do what you want with your property, not what with some city planners think is the best. Under this new city plan, a lot of that is very much streamlined. A lot of that red tape is cut. It makes the analysis much easier, where people are able to do much more. As Sol said, it gives people more options with what they're wanting to do with their property. It doesn't block development into a very cookie-cutter pattern that's very top-down. It allows private property owners to do as they wish. Real briefly, I want to also note that there's been some people who said, well, it's optional if the city has a comprehensive plan or not, or maybe that comprehensive planning is some UN agenda thing. If you want to make that claim, then you probably have to claim the UN has a time machine, because 1927 HB 87 is what requires the city to have a comprehensive plan. And last time my math checked, the math, 1927 long predates the United Nations. It long predates this 1990s Agenda 21 that people are trying to link it to. So if anyone tries to tell you that, they are sadly misinformed.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson. Thanks, sir.
Up next after Ms. Travato is Nathan Smith.
Afternoon, Professor.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Claudia Stravato, and I live in Amarillo, Texas. And after reading the agenda this past weekend, I am interested and curious, maybe concerned, about the hiring of a consulting firm to do something with the City Charter Amendment Committee. And I'm speaking about consent item 10I, hiring a consulting firm for advisory services to that committee. The firm is Baker Tilly. Certainly they're a huge United States firm. When you look at their website and you look at their services that they promote, 75% of those are economic, financial services that they provide. When I looked under municipal advising services, it continued to be financial. So I hope you will address, when we get to that consent item, what exactly that advisory firm is supposed to do. What is their role relevant to the Citizens Committee? What will the charge be to the Citizens Committee, i.e., you're asking them to do something, and what is that? What are the expectations of the committee? And I'm curious as to why we couldn't find local professionals to play an advisory role to the committee in the way of former members of the City Council, in the way of academics at West Texas A&M University. Dr. David Roush is an expert in municipal government. He's the Till Bivens Professor of Political Science. We also could have used one of the law firms in town that represents most of the cities in the Panhandle. So I'm curious about why we had to go outside to do something with this advisory committee and our Citizens Advisory Committee, and even using corporate leaders who have a lot invested in the city and what the outcome of the recommendations would be. So I hope you can address that when we come up to that item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Travato. Mr. Hartman, would you mind sending Ms. Travato the link for the televised meeting and then the information from Baker Tilly that they represented in that meeting so she would have it for her records? We'll be glad to revisit that when we get to that one, but we can give you all that data as well for your records.
Well, I've got it on my phone and then on my computer at home. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Travato.
Mr. Smith. Up after Mr. Smith is Diane Eckhoff.
Good afternoon. I'm Nathan Smith. What else was I? Yes, I live in city limits. As always, with a verse. Going back to Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and Mammon. Anyway, I'm here for the primary purpose of once again requesting that this great council... I'm sorry, I'm lacking the motivation. I don't want to be doing this anymore. But once again, let the people vote to see if women or people are incubators. That'd be awesome. Texas has already decided. Anyway, I'm going to share words briefly from a pastor, David Bronhardt. Barnhart, definitely saying that name wrong. The unborn are a convenient group of people to advocate for. They never make demands of you. They are morally uncomplicated, unlike the incarcerated, addicted, or the chronically poor. They don't resent your condescension or complain that you are not politically correct. The quote goes on at length to showcase that, yes, people love advocating for the unborn. It's easy to advocate for them. Nobody's going to tell you what the unborn are saying. You get to make it up yourself. Whilst you're advocating for the unborn, it also takes into account that there's a bunch of other stuff they could be advocating for, the resources they could use to, I don't know, help the homeless people. Seem like a lot of money is being spent on billboards. Stop abortion trafficking. Fantastic. But, as I said, the unborn are easy to advocate for. Anyway, I've been using the term pro-rape to describe the pro-life because the rape would be a consequence of the policy. A woman smarter than I mentioned, no, they're not really pro-life, and rape is a consequence for a minority. So it would be pro-birth. They're pro-birth, pro-forced birth. And that lady gave me, she was right. It's a better term than what I was using. Anyway, it's hilarious that the people who pound on the pro-life agenda, the Bible thumpers, who love to stand up and tell their followers, I'm the Christiest Christy boy, look at my Bible. It's fantastic. They don't care about the actual things that Jesus said about the homeless, the things that Jesus said about migrants. Very fascinating about the whole migrant thing. I mean, our own fantastic GOP presidential nomination. Migrants are poisoning the blood of our country. That's something the GOP leader said. Migrants. The dude is selling Bibles. I don't know if he's read it or not. The guy in the Bible was not against migrants, but it seems that that's a good political talking point that Bible thumpers don't really pick up on. Why is the guy saying, I'm definitely pro-life, turning around selling Bibles, and then telling us to hate migrants because they're scary? Don't get me wrong, everybody's scary. I'm a bit of a demented person too, but migrants themselves, individually, they're no different than any other group of people. They just want to come here. But it's important to focus on the unalived, the unborn. They never existed. Anyway, y'all have a wonderful day.
You too, Mr. Smith. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Is Ms. Eckhoff present? After Ms. Eckhoff is Richard Waltz.
Is this on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I've never done this before. I just wanted my comments to be basically written, but I'm Diane Eckhoff. I live in what I thought was Amarillo. Bushland, I think, might be a little more that direction, but I really have an issue with Agenda 2045. Basically, I think we just need a little more transparency, a little more discussion before we get right into planning this. We came from a state that was very, very locked down and very compartmentalized, and so it triggers me to have talk of an agenda and so far out. So I just have just a couple of questions, if you would keep that in mind, to address, and that is, those of us who don't understand why it's so far out in the future, Agenda 2045, we get kind of, suspicious when we hear of Agenda 2030. You've heard that out there, the UN and the World Economic Forum discussing, these agendas that they want people to adhere to, and that those of us who have problems with this have a problem with being controlled in our own lives, our own homes, our own zoning, and so we just want to make sure that if you're, talking about a planning agenda that far out, that you are giving people their right to freedom for their land and how they live their lives. And so I feel like we need to have more transparency, maybe even more publicizing of it. People don't always, they work so much and they're so busy that, maybe publicizing it a little more in avenues where most people will see things and maybe a few city council meetings where it's 7 o'clock at night instead of 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't know if that's possible, but just to get the word out so that people aren't just suspicious, because I know I'm not the only one that feels this way. And we move from a state, like I said, that is extremely controlling in their citizens. COVID was a perfect example. They shut us down, and they, we were very controlled as to where we could go, and there was contact tracing with people, and businesses were shut down, and livelihoods were ruined simply because of a virus, and personal medical autonomy was a little bit grabbed back by, what do you call them, non-government organizations like the health departments. And so anyway, just if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little more.
Thank you, Ms. Eckhoff. If you have time and you can wait, we're going to hit that discussion item here shortly.
Oh, great, wonderful.
And we'll get an in-depth discussion over Vision 2045, talk about those items specifically. And then if you still have questions, we'll be happy to let you continue to answer or ask, and we'll answer. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, coming up next is Mr. Waltz, and after him is Trent Rosser.
Mayor, council, my voice is kind of loud at times because I'm 95% deaf. I can't hear myself, and I'm apologizing in advance. And the way I'm dressed too, I didn't know it was going to be so formal. I'm a senior citizen. I'm disabled and a veteran. I don't have much time left, maybe till Christmas, maybe. And I want to go fishing. I can't be as elegant as everybody else because I don't know how to talk that way. Why can't I go fishing? I'll tell you why. There's nowhere for me I can't walk very far, and there's no way for me to get to the water. Any of the lakes that are around here, Martin Road has no fish. Meddy Park, those two ponds, the hills are so steep I'm falling down I don't know how many times. Most times I have to have folks that are walking around the lake get me back up the hill. The bridges that are on the north side, you need an elevator to get down there to the bridge. I'm a taxpayer. I have several properties in this town. I've been here 30 years. I want to know why the disabled can't get to the water. Anybody? Is my time on?
No.
I don't want to be crash or, I don't. I want to take my little girl fishing. And I can't do that. There's nowhere in town. Nowhere. Canyon, the big lakes, you got to walk so far. If I make it to that up there, I'll be lucky to make it to the podium without falling out of breath. I know seniors aren't on the top of everybody's list, but by God, I served in the military. I pay taxes. I should get the same thing that everybody else gets, and I'm not. That's all really I've got to say. I mean,
Could you?
I don't know how much influence that gets to you, but
Yeah. Can you give me your name again, sir? Give me your name again, sir.
oh, I didn't have it on.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
Hey, we could hear you fine.
I'm sorry if.
We won't make you start over, I promise. Can you give me your name again, sir?
What's he say?
What's your name?
My name is Richard Waltz. Richard Waltz, just like the dance.
Okay. So, Mr. Waltz, we're going to hand the microphone to Mr. Hartman, and he's going to address that. But I would just tell you, if you can hear me, we have a place here in town that you can fish at, and we can help facilitate that for you. So, Mr. Hartman, what were you going to contribute to that?
So, yes, Mr. Waltz and Mayor and Council, there is actually an agenda item concerning this topic, which is handicapped accessible fishing dock. It'll be on the agenda.
So, Donnie, would you mind relaying that to him so you're clear that he heard that? Thank you for being here, sir. Mr. Hartman, thank you for contributing that. And then, Mr. Hooper, would you mind getting his contact info when you leave? Yes, sir.
I called and talked to Tom.
Okay.
Great guy, too. I really liked him. Called me back right away. But I've talked to recreations and everything like that. And I got the double time for a half a day on back and forth. But what I was looking for is permission to park near the water. Now, I know it goes on the city grass, but your city vehicles are on it every day.
Mm-hmm.
I go down there every day. I want to fish, but I can't take any more bruising on my legs. I've been to BSA, Wound Care, too many times. They said I'd have to get permission from the council.
Right.
So I don't know if that's even possible.
We appreciate you coming in here. We got you with the right gentleman here with Mr. Hooper. If you would, let him get you going in a good direction on that. I think there's plenty of things we can work on, sir. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Council.
Up next is Trent Rosser.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Trent. I live in Amarillo, Texas. I'm not here about anything on the agenda. I just want to put a bug in your ears about two little issues I'm having. First one's quick and easy. The previous city council did one thing right that I do know of, and that's put these light at these cross sections. The lights in front of the fire stations during the crossways. That is a great idea. But one thing that would be better with them if they actually worked. There are many times I've drove down Washington Street, I've drove down 58th Street, and the fire trucks are coming out, and they should have the right of way no matter what. But the light is still green for cross traffic to go. That's something we might want to check on. Just again, a bug in the ear. Another thing I want to talk about is I'm a little ticked off. I grew up in Amarillo. Where we lived at, neighbors got together with neighbors. We left our front doors open. Everybody had a good time. Yes, there was crime, but not like it is today. February 15th of this year, my stepson came out and said, Trent, there's somebody in your pickup truck. 6 days before he was released from prison, I pulled him out of my truck by gunpoint and held him on the ground with my gun to the back of his head. One little move, I could have blown his head away. It took police officers 10 to 15 minutes to get there. I don't blame the police officers a bit. They have enough on their plate. We don't have enough police officers. We don't have the resources that they should have to make this city safe and like it was back in the 80s. There's 3 or 4 of them back here right now. My hat's off to each and every one of them. I don't blame them. This is the 9th time in 10 years that my vehicle or something has happened to my property, myself. When the police was walking him away, he threatened me, my life, my family, my wife, my property, saying something about gang, I'll be back, blah, blah, blah. Finally, I got the prosecuting attorney call me last Friday. He's getting 120 days time served. Another thing, remember, he did get bonded out, which everybody right. He was arrested February 15th. February 9th, released from prison. Broke into my truck February 15th. Was rearrested. Released on bond March 6th. Rearrested for the exact same crime March 28th. He's getting 128 days in prison, or 120 days. Is there something we can do to help these officers get either more officers, get better equipment? I don't know. I know enough about city politics. I know enough about agendas. I know enough to prove everybody. I don't know nothing about it. This is why we have y'all. And I'm actually asking for y'all's help. Help these guys. Let's get our crime back. Let's get our Amarillo back. Let's get it off one of the top crime cities in Texas. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that's everyone that signed up. Do I have anyone else here who? Yes, sir. Mr. Ingalls, if you don't mind coming up, sir.
Hello, Mayor, Council. My name is Tim Ingalls. I live in the Plemmons-Echo neighborhood in Amarillo. Gosh, I think about 2 years ago, maybe, I was nominated to be on the committee for City Plan 2045. And, I've been, tracking different progress with the zoning, I guess, for 4 or 5 years now. The city had been working on these zoning changes, and the previous initiative, I think, had some issues. So I've been on the committee for this one for 2 years now, and I just really think I think it's one of the most impressive, if not the most impressive, public outreach initiative that I've seen come from the city. I've been on multiple city committees, pedestrian bike committee, and sometimes, the public outreach fell through the cracks in different areas there. This one, I think there was just ample time, space, and place for people to reach out, whether that was multiple meetings, sometimes at noon, sometimes at 5:30, whether that was via email, whether that was just all kinds of ways. So I was actually quite impressed with the desire from staff and their advisors to really get as much public input as they could. And then, I've been studying zoning reform at, national conferences. I'm heading to one actually this evening. And I think that this zoning reform and everything that's within this is a really big, great, good step towards moving the city to kind of where we want to be, I think, in the 21st century. It also incorporates a lot of desires for more trail systems and all these different things that, for example, we have a trail plan from 2005 or something. 2/3 of it has never been adopted, never really been looked at. It gets looked at, but it's never used really as a roadmap saying, hey, we're going in that direction. So I guess I'm getting short on time here. I'll also say, I guess, because I've been following the zoning a lot, many of these areas, they get way greater flexibility. So if it's a single-family lot and that's how it's zoned, in some of these areas in a commercial area, now you can do mixed use. You can do a duplex. You can do a townhome. There's a lot of great flexibility here. And the more that the city gets that flexibility, it'll increase our tax revenue and make us wealthier as a community. So that's my thoughts and comments, and I just really believe in all the work that was put into City Plan 2045. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate you. Do I have anyone else here that would like to offer public comment before we move on? Seeing no one, we're going to go ahead and move on from public comment into our discussion items. Discussion item 9A, Any review for agenda items from any council? Anything on this? No?
No, sir.
Okay. Item 9B is a presentation on some graphics for some vehicles from our Chief of Police. Chief, how you doing today?
Doing great, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. We'll hand it over to you.
Mayor, Council, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. As you've just heard, public safety is always on the minds of our community, and I know that that's always on the minds of our city council as well. One of our mandates has always been visibility, but certainly over the last couple of years we've heard that loud and clear. So changing the look of our vehicles is not a simple task. We wanted to be considerate of council's vision for high visibility, also considerate of our budget, and then kind of future-proof this so that our vehicles have a consistent look over the next few years. So we started on this project a couple of months ago. I got with the Office of Engagement and Innovation, and they helped us come up with a design that we think the community will recognize as an Amarillo police car. And so I was going to go over that here real quickly. My deal's not working there for some reason. Oh, very important step there. Thank you. When we started this project, we wanted to make sure that visibility was the top priority for our police cars, and that's why we wear uniforms. That's why we have marked cars. We want the public to see us out and about as often as possible. Also to be able to instantly recognize an Amarillo police car. There's a variety of different graphics out there. We've had the same graphic or similar graphic over the last few years. We didn't want to change it so much that people wouldn't recognize immediately that it's an Amarillo police car that they're looking at. We also had to consider simplicity. Sometimes our cars get scratched up or dinged or have to be, the graphic has to be replaced for one reason or another. Our previous graphics were fairly complex and a little more expensive, and so we wanted to simplify that to where when we do have to replace them, it's not such a big task, nor is it expensive. And we wanted to make sure we maintain the police brand. We get a lot of compliments on our police patch, both locally and nationally, so we wanted to include that in our new graphic design. So our Office of Engagement and Innovation, Mr. Isaiah Smith took the lead on this, and I have to give him full credit for this design. We did go back and forth a few times between our staff and some police officers, and Mr. Smith was able to come up with this design, and this is his drawing. The good news is we own the design as a city. We're not subject to any copyright from another company like we have been in the past. So we can do what we want. We can source this locally, which is what we're doing, to get the graphics produced locally instead of elsewhere. Just a little brief history. I'll indulge here for a second. This is a picture I found of our previous police cars. You can see there's a little bit of similarity, even though these are cars that are about 2 years apart, an 89, a 91, a 93 model. But we've maintained that black and white look for many years, which most of us in law enforcement like. There's a picture from about 1993, one of our professional police models in that picture there. But our cars maintain that look, and back in the 90s we had the badge on the side of the car, which was a good marking, but again a little bit complex. They tended to fade and peel and stuff, and so along about 2008 we changed from the old design to the newer design, which is the one on the right there. It's got kind of the slick looking graphic, but again the complexity of that a little bit more difficult to maintain, but nonetheless we kept that for several years. In 2013 we transitioned to the smaller Taurus vehicles that Ford was producing for police work. Good cars, just a little too small, so we only kept those, or we only ordered those for 1 year. We maintained the graphic when we went to 2014, the same black and white design. What's changed in 2014 is Ford went away from painting the white on the cars to using a wrap, and the wrap's basically a big white sticker, and so it's actually a solid black car underneath, but the white wrap on there. What we started finding is that the wraps did not hold up very well. They get dinged when officers are getting in and out of cars or when prisoners are getting in and out of the back, and so they would start chipping on the side. Another design, we tried this for just a minute. Nobody really liked it, but you can see on this one the white wrap fading at the top. It's turning brown, and it's just the harsh Texas sun there beating those things up. So we started coming up with some different ideas, but we maintained that through 2021. You can see when they're newer, they look pretty good, but again, that's a wrap, and over time it's going to fade. And it also adds a little bit of expense to the vehicle to have the wrap on there. So we decided to do away with the white doors, and we kept our same graphic. But after looking at this for a couple of years, we decided it works, but it's not as visible and as bold as we'd like it to be. And again, the graphic's a little more complex. There's another view of that. So this is our new design. We wanted to maintain the black and white look overall, so we chose big, bold white letters on the black car. The beauty about this is it's much easier to replace. We don't have the white wrap on there that's going to fade and have to be potentially maintained. But we maintain the Amarillo logo, the patch logo, and then the bold words police so that people can instantly recognize our police cars when they're in their neighborhood. It's just kind of a rear view. We also added a QR code on top of our joinamarillopolice.org because we're always recruiting. So if somebody clicks on that, it'll take them to our recruiting page. This is kind of just an overall view of how the new cars are going to look. The bulk of the police cars will look like this. We do have some pickups, and I'll talk about those here in a second. But overall, the cars will be black with bold white graphics on them. The good news, there's even more good news actually, but we got 7 pickups. I know that our Mr. Hooper gave us good news earlier this week that the rest of our cars are now being produced. So we've got over 50 cars total that are coming out. Some of those are starting to roll out. We got the pickups last week. They started coming to us, and this was where Public Works had helped us out a lot with sourcing some vehicles that we hadn't traditionally driven, but we needed new cars, and we talked about that a few months ago. So we appreciate the help on that, and those pickups are rolling out. We didn't get a color choice on those. They came to us in all white, so we just flipped the graphic, put the black graphic on the white truck. So a lot of our supervisors or watch commanders will be driving the 7 pickups. The rest of our patrol staff will be driving the black with white graphic police cars. There's a little different view of that. So that's just kind of a rollout there. It's the first major change we've had in several years on how our police cars look. The timing's really good because since we have such a high turnover of cars, if we were going to make a change, this was the time to do it. So we hope that the City of Amarillo, our community, recognizes our police cars instantly when we see them. And now we're going to have a lot of newer cars that are in much better shape. And we very much appreciate that. I know the council's worked hard to put pressure everywhere we can to get those cars, and it's much appreciated.
Questions for Chief, Council?
Looks good, Chief.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, good job. Looks real good.
Thanks, sir. Thank you again to Isaiah Smith and Mr. Schutbach and his staff for helping us do that.
Yeah, we appreciate the team getting in there and getting it done. When do you think you'll have all this rolled out? And
They're actually coming out right now. My fleet manager sent me a picture a while ago. They've got 4 or 5 cars sitting on the line. They're coming from an upfitter, pretty much ready to go. We just have to add the graphic. Again, we're doing that locally, and then a few things, local pieces of equipment we put in. We've got some people doing that full time. Our Axon project is part of the vehicle equipment, the cameras that are going in. Those are rolling out this week too as well. So, everything just kind of came together at the right time.
Nice. Appreciate that, Chief. Thank you for the update.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you. So that is 9B. We're going to move on to item 9C. We have Miss Emily Kohler coming up here to walk us through Vision 2045, and then we will get into a good discussion on this one.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present the final draft of City Plan Vision 2045. I'd like to start just with a few introductions and acknowledgments. So first, you're used to seeing our lead consultant on the project, MIG. They're not here today. The city's kind of taking over the reins of the project at this point, but they're still involved. Jay Rankins was our principal in charge, leading that out of the Denver office, and then Saul Vasquez was a project manager based in San Antonio. I definitely want to acknowledge the other team members in my department who have been instrumental in this. Shari Kendall is here. She's our community engagement manager and just did a ton of work on the community outreach. She's in the back. She wants to wave. Okay. And then Joyce Stewart, I saw her earlier, but I don't know if she's still in the council chambers, but really critical members of the team. And then lastly, and most importantly, I want to acknowledge our City Plan Steering Committee. You've heard from some of the members today. We have 8 of them that are here in support. And I think I've got them all. Helen Burton, Deepak Patel, Tiffany Podzemny, Tommy Knox, Ann Scamahorn, Skylar Gallup, Tim Ingalls, and Sherry Ferguson are all here today. We really appreciate it. They're the ones that ultimately are responsible for how this plan came together and the final recommendation to y'all. So You'll be glad to know that this is not a page-by-page review of the draft. This is intended to be a very high-level overview. So I'm just going to do a few slides on what is it, why is it important, and then I'm going to cover just some of the big ideas coming out of it, and then what people can expect next after it's adopted. So first of all, what is it? So this is the city's updated comprehensive plan. I will talk in more detail later as to why it's called City Plan Vision 2045. But this is our comprehensive plan. The first one was actually done for the city in 1930 when we first implemented zoning for the city of Amarillo. So we've been doing this for a long time, and best practice is that cities update these, take care of them, and they evolve over time. All comprehensive plans are intended to set a vision and policies for growth, and the goal is to provide community direction for land use decisions, including zoning and other development standards. And like Tim mentioned, we're really trying to encourage more strategic management of growth so we can realize the increase to our tax base without putting an additional burden on individuals. And they're also used to align the city's infrastructure and public facilities needs with land use planning. Let's see. So I wanted to touch on the reason why we do comprehensive planning. And Mr. Dawson also mentioned this too, that this isn't an option for the city, that we are required to do it. The authority comes from Chapter 213 and Chapter 211 in the Texas Local Government Code. I've included some of the language in the presentation. Chapter 213 grants cities the power to do comprehensive planning to promote sound development, using police power, promoting public health, safety, and welfare. So you'll notice that is an option that allows cities to do it, but any city that has a zoning ordinance that's choosing to enforce zoning has to do it in accordance with a comprehensive plan. So essentially we cannot enforce zoning if we don't have a comprehensive plan, and those two need to be in alignment. And we've already had some discussion on this, so city plan and property owner rights. So it's a land use plan, so inevitably we are going to need to address how it affects property owner rights. And I think this is what really sets a city plan apart from other comprehensive plans, is that the whole plan really is based on this idea of a carrot approach, that we're trying to set a new vision and then use best practices and incentives as a way to guide change rather than regulatory restrictions. And so I think this is really important. At the time that the plan is adopted or will be adopted, there are no regulations that are changed. The idea is that we've identified the things we want to work on, and we have a lot of community input on where we want to go, and we'll start to work on those specific zoning and development standards after the plan's adopted with the direction from city plan. I think really importantly, it encourages and outlines a voluntary process for property owners to change zoning to protect single-family areas. So these are new policies, and I can tell you that this means that we'll never be in a situation again like we were with the North Heights rezoning initiative. So I think we've accomplished some really important things as far as direction on how we would approach that, and that's all laid out in city plan. And then it also, and the speakers alluded to this, just encourages new development opportunities. It doesn't require them, that favor owners and investors, especially around mixed use and housing, different housing types. Okay, so why is it called City Plan Vision 2045? So most people think of a comprehensive plan as that 500-page brown binder. It is not an interesting or engaging document for the average citizen. So that's our 1987 plan on the table there. And so when we started this project, the community outreach was going to be a really important part of this. We wanted people to know what it was and participate, and we wanted the average citizen to be engaged in the process. And so we thought that city plan sounded more modern, more contemporary, and the Vision 2045 honestly was because these are long-term plans. Like, that's the idea, is that what we're doing in here we can't do in a few years. Like, we have to think long-term, but it doesn't mean that we never change what's in here. And so we say that this is about a 20-year time frame. So that's why we use 2045, is to try to quickly communicate that this is a long-term 20-year plan for the city. Vision is it's a common planning, like using that phrase is a common planning phrase. So I just want to clarify that it doesn't have any association with any of the global organizations or agendas. If I had it to do all over again, I absolutely would have called it the 2024 update to the comprehensive plan. But here's where we are. I also want to clarify that it's funded 100% with city funding. There's no outside grant funding that's involved in this, and it is the largest public engagement effort that we've ever undertaken for something like this. So all that's to say it's 100% an Amarillo plan. We paid for it, and it was developed completely by citizens here. It does recommend certain strategies for concerns that we learned from people participating in the process around mobility that use some of the planning buzzwords. So safe streets and roads for all, complete streets, vision zero. But I think it's hard to address some of those concerns without talking about some of these programs, because these are federal programs that provide funding for infrastructure to solve these specific concerns that are coming from the community. So that's why those are in there, and they are important resources for us if we want to address the challenges that were identified during the plan. Okay, so what are the big ideas? So the kind of the high-level takeaways. So the first one we've already kind of talked about, community engagement. So we kicked off in November of 2022. We have been working on this for about a year and a half now, and we have put so much effort into trying to reach Amarilloans where they are. So workshops, we did student outreach, online surveys, the steering committee. We had a developer stakeholder group that included all of the key landowners in Amarillo. And so right now we're stating that we have about 4,000 active participants in this process. Active meaning they wrote something down, they came to a meeting, they contributed something productive to the process. But we reached far more than that. And then after we were here, I think that was last July maybe, we got some feedback from you that you wanted to make sure that people understood the map. And so we developed a completely new outreach strategy that we called our community connectors. And so we tried to find one person. We divided the city into 67 neighborhoods, and we tried to find one person who would be sort of our conduit in that neighborhood, where they would come and get detailed information and really understand what this was, and then they would try to share it with their neighbors and friends and people in the area. And I would say this was really successful, and so you can see a map of where we reached 54 of 67 neighborhoods, and it's the Texas Association of Municipal Information Officers have named City Plan as a finalist for one of their TAMI Awards, largely due to this outreach effort. So what we've done as far as trying to reach the community is also being recognized by a statewide industry organization for its efforts as well. So all of that outreach led to the community vision statement and the guiding principles, which really serve as the foundation for the plan. So this is what we say we want our city to become, and I thought I would just touch on a few of them. I know you've seen this before, but this really is what everything else flows from. So we know we're a car-dependent city, but we still want some walkable areas that feel like districts, maybe like places that we take our families to out of town that we enjoy being in. We want some of those here. We want our housing prices to stay low, so we want more housing options. We want to celebrate our history and identity more in how we build and develop. We want everyone to experience an increased quality of life in their neighborhood, meaning it's clean, safe, and convenient. And we want to make sure that the older neighborhoods get prioritized too as we move into the future. So the vision and the guiding principles then kind of lead to the next big idea, which is that we now have community-directed growth policies. So we have these targets, and this is for the Amarillo area. It's not just for the city limits, but the growth expectations are about 50,000 new residents, 27,000 new jobs, and about 22,000 housing units over the next 20 years. And so that's part of what we're doing, is trying to figure out where these people go and how we coordinate these uses. And so the community growth policies that come out of this deal with these kind of three big areas. So maintaining strategic employment areas, improving compatibility and transitions, and encouraging neighborhood and community mixed use. And so the way that we implement those is through what we call the future land use map, but in city plan, it's referred to as the complete neighborhood scenario map. So that's going to be the one kind of immediate change that comes out of city plan, is that we will have a different future land use map, and we're calling it the complete neighborhood scenario map. And essentially, we've taken the community-directed growth policies and created patterns, and then those are applied to this map, and that's how we start to sort of shape how the city grows. But I want to make sure that I clarify that this isn't zoning. This is what guides zoning in the future, and 80% of this map is still the same as our existing one, and the 20% that's changing is introducing the flexibility and new opportunities, especially through housing types that we've been hearing. So that's kind of how all the pieces start to fit together, of how we go from vision to policy to implementing that on the ground. And another thing that will be different is that we're moving to place types. So this is a new system for assigning future land use, and rather than go parcel by parcel, we're assigning kind of a group of associated uses to an area, back to this idea of creating more complete neighborhoods and better quality places. We look at it kind of one step up rather than the parcel level. And so we also think that this is going to provide more flexibility through the development process too, as far as zoning decisions, that there will be more uses that are available that probably will lead to an expedited process compared to what we have now. And then we have our target growth areas. So this is a new map. And this, I mean, once a week I get asked, where's the city growing? Where are we prioritizing growth? Where do we want to grow? So we have a map that shows this, and this is mostly focusing on corridors, areas that we expect to change, and then vacant and undeveloped land. And then the last one, so there are only 5 big ideas. This is the last one. We have included these optional design strategies in the plan. So there are renderings, back to that idea of best practices and trying to show a new vision or maybe way things that can be done differently, but not requiring them. So this is Sauncey Road near Heritage Hills, just sort of reimagining maybe a way to provide commercial that better serves that neighborhood, because that's what we're hearing from residents. And then when we talk to the developers, they like this, but see some potential challenges. And I think that's just a good example of kind of where we are at now. We know what the community wants, and we have kind of a vision for it. So now we have to figure out, well, what's palatable to the developers with that transition between residential to commercial. Right now, we're showing that this is a landscaped buffer, but it's also a placeholder because there's another version of this rendering that shows townhomes. So as Amarillo continues to grow, potentially they could come back and sort of maximize that piece of land and do a row of townhomes, and we have a better transition for the neighborhood. Let's see, I know these are kind of hard to see. So we have a rendering that shows ways to establish transitional buffers using different housing types and mixed use between industrial development and neighborhood residential. We have shown an example of what we're calling innovation retrofit. So this is Sunset Center and Amtech. Illustrates adding a mix of uses to create more of a campus feel. Again, none of this is required, but just showing what potentially could be possible. When we show this to people, especially that live in that area, they get really excited thinking about that becoming more of a destination and a district that's within walking distance. And then the last one, infill development. This is showing a site in downtown that's maximized with a variety of housing types. Okay, so what happens next? So City Plan has basically a mini strategic plan built within it. So the last chapter, Chapter 8, is the implementation section. And that's also the at-a-glance document that you have has that excerpted. So it's kind of like 5 things in 5 years in that what comes next section. So the intent behind this was to try to be really transparent and concise about what the changes would be that would result from City Plan. So people don't feel like, it's this dense document, it's hard to get through what's in there that we don't know about. That this list is what we've said that we would work on over the next 5 years, which would be when we would identify an amendment to the plan or an update to the plan. And so we list the specific code updates that we would want. So the planning department would not be doing anything that's not on here as far as a code update. I think that's important for people to hear. So I'll just run through them. Update the zoning code, subdivision code, and development policy manual to align with the complete neighborhood scenario. Support and expand available tools to encourage reinvestment in older neighborhoods. Create a comprehensive infrastructure prioritization schedule and implementation strategy to align funding and annual budgets. Update existing neighborhood plans and establish a system for creating new plan areas. And improve the safety and quality of Amarillo's pedestrian infrastructure, focusing on desired activity centers, including commercial, mixed-use areas, parks, and schools. So that's what we would hope to do as a result of our efforts with City Plan. And I think that one of the most important outcomes is that we will start to work to align our various infrastructure plans around the anticipated and desired growth in City Plan, so we know what projects are needed, where and when, and that we would be able to better identify funding for those prioritized projects. And the plan is meant to be flexible. I know there are concerns about the long time frame. These are doing this process is an investment for the city. And so ideally, we just take better care of this plan and work with it more, and then we don't have to make the same kind of large investment. So there's an annual amendment process that's built into this. Changes to the map, the complete neighborhood scenario map, can be done at the time of development. And then every 5 years, we'd be expecting to do a more significant update. And then this is my last slide. So this is, I think you've seen this in one of the weekly reports. So we have had this draft available to the public starting in March, and we've done a lot of outreach around this. So the Planning and Zoning Commission had a detailed workshop on it, and then they've voted to recommend approval to you already. We've been back to meet with the developer stakeholder group in March. This was posted for public comment. We collected those comments and have incorporated or responded to those. We did a series of open houses. And then the City Plan Steering Committee voted on a recommendation for approval. And so we have 25 members in support of the plan and 2 that did not respond. So the next step after today would be public hearing and consideration, and we would expect to do that in June, probably first or second meeting in June based on feedback today. Thank you.
Ms. Kohler, thank you for that. That's a good presentation. I know that's a lot of work, and to summarize it to that level and still, I think, communicate adequately is difficult. So thank you. Council, questions for Ms. Kohler? Councilman Kraft? No?
No, I just was curious on Mrs. Eckhoff's comments earlier, if those answered any of her questions she had. Okay. That's really the only thing I had. Is I'm just concerned about the citizens' input, make sure it's answered.
Okay, we can come back around to that too here. Councilman Sherlin.
Very good plan. Do you feel like the community was well engaged in all of your meetings?
Yeah, I think that we've done everything we can to try to reach a diverse segment of Amarillo. I feel like we had a great response to our survey. We tried a lot of different methods, and yeah, I mean, I think that the participation is exceeds probably what most comprehensive planning processes have.
And this has nothing to do with the World Forum or anything like that, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
We just want to make sure that's loud and clear that, and can this plan be changed as we go down the road?
Yes. Yep. So the Chapter 8, the implementation chapter, has a lot of detail on that. I just kind of breezed through that. But if we find clerical errors, we can fix those administratively. The map, we can make amendments to the map as development projects come in, provided they're consistent with the criteria that's in here. We also wrote in that we would do an annual review with our developers and landowners to just kind of talk about their plans and what might be changing, and then we could bring those changes to planning and zoning and be proactive about making changes to the complete neighborhood scenario map. And then, yeah, the idea is that we would take better care of this one and keep it updated so it stays relevant for the community.
Thank you.
Well, first I just want to say thank you to staff and the people in the community who've been part of this. I can't think of, I mean, this is a template for community input. Like you said, so many, probably in modern history of the city have we ever done this much effort, and it's been going on well over a year. I mean, back even when we were running for office, there was talk about this plan and everything. So for all the work that's been done to it, I think that's I think you've done a great job at being able to do that. You can't hit everyone. Everyone's not going to be able to find out about it. There's still time to get questions answered and input. So, but thank you for everyone that has dedicated
a lot of time, energy, and effort to this, and I think we've got something that we can really work with. I guess my two questions are of the plan. If you said this is one thing that the plan is addressing, this is great. It's finally time for addressing this. We think it's something that can help be positive change. What would that something be that you felt like has come out of this that can help guide us even better for a better community over the next 20 years?
Well, I think introducing the mixed use, like intentional mixed use zoning districts, and then the variety of housing types. I mean, we're starting to see our developers wanting to build and develop different kinds of neighborhoods with different housing products, and I think that we've run into some code challenges with that, and I think that this solves those, opens up new opportunities, introduces maybe new things to the market here that we haven't seen, but that people are wanting, and I think that's one of the best things that will come out of this.
And just for mixed-use development, I hear that word a lot, so tell me what that means.
So that means that within like a single building, you could have two different, so the first floor could be like an office space, and then the person could live above or behind it. Opening up opportunities for entrepreneurs potentially, or on a larger scale, allowing an apartment complex and potentially a shopping center to start to coexist. Our uses in Amarillo are very separated, and again, it's what people are asking for, those things, asking for more of that district feel where they can shop, eat, pick up their dry cleaning, like do all those things in one place.
Yeah, and I mean, what are the obstacles to that right now outside of potential ways to just encourage that more?
Well, so it has to do with the neighborhood unit concept. So our guiding policy right now has this goes here, the shopping center goes here, the houses go here. And so if someone comes in and wants to do something that's outside the parameters of that policy, it's hard for us to find a way to prove. But I think that's what Mr. Dawson was talking about, is like we're trying to be realistic with what we have now, but it could look arbitrary. Like it's not good practice to say, oh, well, it doesn't meet this, but we're okay with it because of the way things have developed, that now our policy aligns with the way we want to develop, and I don't think we'll see as many of those challenges or conflicts.
Mm-hmm. And if you had to say one thing that, boy, this was the hot button item, that maybe there's not consensus or still that we really had to work through, was there a particular hot button issue that you say that's still one we're looking at something, but that one still gets a little bit of attention, or maybe not quite the comfort level of other areas?
I might look to my committee members. Hot button items, are there?
Just the name.
Just the name.
I think it's just trying to figure out what it all means. I mean, zoning's complex, so I think just trying to figure out all the different pieces of it takes some time.
Thanks.
Thank you, Miss Emily. We appreciate it. I got a few quick questions for you. So rezoning and non-conforming were probably where we kind of got stuck last go-round on the North Heights piece. So can you explain or communicate once again voluntary rezoning only, right? So you have a scenario map that is going to overlay existing zoning. Then you have an implementation that, and correct me if I steer us wrong here, you have an implementation that encourages zoning but doesn't require it in those areas. So if I am in a residential neighborhood, existing zone, right, but what I bought was a mechanic shop, and it's been a mechanic shop for 50 years, so I'm currently non-conforming, right? But then in the issue that we had last time, we had I don't know if we even called it non-compliant, but there was the assumption that, okay, well, I'm non-conforming and now I have to come into compliance. So speak a little bit to that in the way in which, is it totally voluntary rezoning, and what happens to non-conforming in those areas?
So the complete neighborhood scenario, the future land use map may, I don't know, I might use a slightly different example than what you gave me. So we may have a residential neighborhood, they're houses, but they're in industrial zoning. The guidance in here basically lays out that we're going to work to encourage that to continue to be a residential neighborhood because the future land use map says that it is supposed to be a neighborhood. And it would require, though, every property owner whose property wants to move from industrial to a single family, that they would have to participate, that there wouldn't be any city-initiated rezoning effort to change that. So I think that's kind of the first point. And then as far as non-conforming, I don't think that the future land use map would come into effect until somebody wants to do something different with that property. But if they want to continue running that as a mechanic shop, they can sell that. That this wouldn't affect that. Again, provides the guidance. So at the time that they want to change the use of that, that then the future land use map would provide the direction for what that could become. But it can be a mechanic shop for another 100 years if it wants to be.
Okay. And would you say that the recommendations on the zoning are less restrictive overall? So that you're moving to, in this scenario map, you have areas where it's a lesser restriction of the zoning code?
Yeah, I think I think that's the right way to say it, that there are more opportunities for development types within what the future land use map provides. So the mixed use districts would allow, like right now we have residential, commercial, like it's a very traditional future land use map, but now potentially a place that is supposed to be residential currently on our future land use map might now say community mixed use. And so it would allow like a new neighborhood that's developing to incorporate commercial uses without any kind of zoning, or they'd have a zoning, but it's basically a expedited process for them to do that. Whereas before it'd be like, well, it says it's supposed to be residential and not sure you can put commercial there.
Okay. Carrot, no stick. So just to make sure our public hears, we do have some carrots out there. We do have some encouragement. There is no stick associated with this, meaning I think what we will hear, the tendency would be, yeah, you said scenario, but then you also said implement zoning, and so here comes the stick. And so can you reassure our citizens that there is no stick in the way in which, we're encouraging this, but once again, there's no city initiated, and then there'll be no requirement, even to the point of being non-conforming?
Yeah, no, I think you said it well, and yes.
Okay, so I think that was probably where we got hung up in the last one. And then and I don't think we're to this point. I think we've had a very good discussion, but the name isn't, I guess I'd say substantive. So if we really had an issue, could we make changes? Could we rename it the 2024 Comprehensive Plan?
You could.
And then did we take any grants for anything? I know you said that this was not funded by anything other than tax dollars. So do we have any grants that we've received as the city that have hooks in them that are going to require us to implement, some sort of agenda or anything like that?
No, this is all funded through our CIP program. There is no external funding that's part of the plan.
And then we appreciate all your hard work on it. And this council body at any time can call the plan back if we've missed something, if we've got hung up on something, if we had an issue with our citizenry, we can call it back, we could make those changes, and that lines up with your annual review.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. It's adopted by ordinance.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the specificity that you spoke to on the different entities that you've been hit with and that we've received emails on. We are trying to do what we need to do just to put together a good planning document and not make it anything other than that. So thank you for your candor and for having a very upfront discussion with us here today. Before we close the discussion, I know we had, is it Ms. Eckhoff? I think, I had said, and I would open it up if I had anybody else that had any issues that they didn't get clarity on. Do I have anyone here that would like to offer a comment while we're in this discussion? Yes, sir, Mr. Fremmer, if you come up. Thank you, Ms. Kohler. Appreciate you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, my concern is she says implementation of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the zoning has to have some enforcer of the zoning if it's been corrupted by the users of that property. And I've seen a piece of property in Amarillo in Edgefield Edition that's been improperly used because it's been used as a machinist shop, but it's a residential house. Mm-hmm. And they have 4 or 5 cars sitting around that particular property. And I don't see the city marshal able to have the label of ability to tell that property owner that he's abusing the residential definition by turning it into a mechanical shop, because it is a residential property.
Well, we do have a few examples of where that was going on and how good of a job our city marshal has done.
Well, that's what I've been waiting to see, that's been enforced. And I was curious about the implementation concern. And then the other concern was about the infrastructure conversation, mm-hmm. as to where we're going to address infrastructure that's been lacking in a section of our city, and when was that going to be implemented in your 20-year plan? When was the infrastructure for the city so that developers can go into that area, because the infrastructure can support that development if developers choose to go into that part of our city?
Well, let's address that real quick, and let me just take a stab at it, and then we'll let Floyd weigh in. But on the infrastructure piece, everything is prioritized through our CIP plan. So we have our 5-year look at our CIP, and we're funding that based on what we have in capital or cash-funded capital, depending on what enterprise or general fund we're in. And so we prioritize those with staff as council. And then this plan helps us to guide looking forward. So if you take our AEDC as a piece of this, that is now saying, oh, hey, we've got this 100,000 square foot building that's coming here and it's going to add 1,000 jobs. Well, that could change some of the needs. And we overlay this with this strategic plan. And now it gives us a document where it's a little easier to say, okay, no, we planned for this. We know we could handle this, and that helps staff. Floyd, do you want to drill down into any of that for Mr. Fremmer?
Just a couple of points based off the topic, the Vision 2045 plan. So most of the identified projects come out of the individual specific master plans: water, wastewater, streets, drainage, or subsets of those master plans. Those master plans rely on the comprehensive plan and interact with that comprehensive plan in the planning department. Those are components of how those plans work together. So any part of the city, we have identified how sewer would be served, how water would be served, a general idea of how streets and what it takes, but that's the component of the comprehensive plan, working with master planning to identify that infrastructure and how that goes hand in hand. It's much more complex than that, but that's the global look at as you bring it down into the planning process.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Bottom line, it depends on growth. It depends on capitalism. It depends on prioritization in the way in which the city's grown. So we're speculating on our plan based on, well, this looks like this is where this is going. This looks like what we should prepare for. But then we've got to be flexible and take the growth as it comes. So that is hopefully a decent answer to where you're going. There's no timetable on, well, this is when this mile of pipe will go in here. based on a planning document. The timetable would be based on funding and the prioritization in our CIP. And let me try to answer your second question. And if you want to come back up here, we'll give you just another minute. So go ahead and come on back up, Jesse, because I don't know if that answer was solid enough for you.
Well, I appreciate the thinking of that, but my also concern is about a 100-year area that has not been addressed, and I'm curious about the prioritization for our prioritization situation, because I'm hearing Kids Inc. is getting efforts in our infrastructure support, which is a viable project. It's got capital investment in that area, but we've got a section of our city that has been left behind because of its location in our city, and it's only 12 blocks from downtown Amarillo. And I'm curious about why that area hasn't been addressed with a more aggressive attitude of prioritization. And you know what I'm talking about because you keep bringing it up, North Heights.
Sure.
And North Heights is a very compromised area for its infrastructure, which is a big expense out of our water bills.
Mm-hmm.
And our water bills are being used to develop different parts of our city for infrastructure needs for the developers that are willing to develop other parts of our city. But that area needs to be addressed because people are living in that part of our city, and it seems to be a prioritization just based on its time to help them out, even though it's going to cost us some money to do it, because they are way behind the rest of our city that's being developed. And that's my concern on prioritization as to when we put these things based on your plan, your city plan of Mr. Floyd,
Yeah.
and trying to decide when you're going to authorize him to be able to invest these things.
Sure.
And I don't know when you come up with that
Well,
prioritization period.
Here's a great answer for you. Like, I don't have the answer. So.
I understand.
So I don't have the money. I don't have the answer. But I'm working on it. And this plan won't do anything to push us in the wrong direction. It'll help us move forward. So do I have anyone else here that wanted to speak? Yes, sir. Mr. Dawson, if you want to come up. And then if we're okay, I'm going to try to lead us forward so we won't get into too much more discussion. But
I want to perhaps expand a little bit on my comments from earlier and address some of the things that have been discussed. So first of all, and Emily did a really good job, but as far as like the legal requirement, as a law student myself, it's one area that I kind of went down some rabbit holes on over the last few weeks. So, I noted earlier, I'm one of the loudest voices in support of private property rights here locally, and we currently do have a zoning ordinance. We try to enforce the zoning ordinance. I will say, and I've been public about this, personally, I would be completely fine with getting rid of the zoning ordinance. I've said that before. I think that zoning laws are a violation of private property rights, but with the current situation the city has, unless the public or this council decides to give different guidance, I think that we're probably going to continue having a zoning ordinance in place. And so, there has been that discussion about if it's required or not to have the comprehensive plan. And to reiterate what I said, it goes back to 1927 when the legislation was passed at the state level, 1930 when the city decided that it was going to exercise that option to regulate land use through zoning. And so it is only optional insofar as, yes, it is optional for the city to not have zoning ordinance. And in fact, there are cities in the state, the largest city in the state, in fact, Houston does not have a zoning ordinance. It's the largest city, I believe, in the country that does not have a zoning ordinance. But so that's, I think, where some of the discussion about if it's optional or not comes in. And like I said, as a law student, I kind of forced myself to go down that rabbit hole, looking up the old legislative records, finding the original bill and reading it. Now, as far as the infrastructure goes, and this was a really good discussion, but to kind of go back to it from a high-level view, the city plan, what it is basically at its heart, and I think one thing that this city plan in particular does really well at making it clear is that really what a city plan, a comprehensive plan is it's basically a map with a few hundred pages of explanation as to what the map means. So really at its heart is that future land use map, or I'm drawing blank on the new name for it.
Scenario.
Yeah, scenario, complete neighborhood scenario. The way that the infrastructure goes into that, to maybe kind of help answer that question, is the city plan doesn't say, it's not an infrastructure plan first and foremost, it's a land use plan. But in order to have that infrastructure, in order to make those improvements, we need to know where the development is going to be, what kind of development is going to be there. And so having a plan allows that infrastructure planning to go forward. So the plan itself isn't prioritizing, setting a list of priorities as to where the infrastructure improvements need to take place, but it gives guidance to the parts of the city that make those prioritizations. So as far as does the plan prioritize the right areas or not for infrastructure, that's kind of the, it doesn't do that, but it's a prerequisite to the organizations within the city that do make those prioritizations.
I think that,
to kind of
I think that's well said.
get to that. And also, as I noted, and as was brought up, as far as why we need to have this update, 11B, I think, is, to reiterate, a great example of why we need that. Because there are developments, and there is a push in the market for these different types of development. It's not just abstract, and as much as I appreciate the community input, I think this is even stronger, the fact that there is rezoning in areas in the city that are developing outside of that cookie cutter plan. 11B, like I mentioned, you'll notice in the analysis, it doesn't fit with the complete neighborhood scenario, or the current traditional neighborhood unit concept, but it's what we're going forward with anyways. And to kind of loop back in the infrastructure argument, if we're doing this where we're having to be kind of arbitrary in deciding what we're allowing being built and stuff, and straying so far from what's in the city plan, it then, I think, makes it harder. And I can't speak for them, but I know that I can imagine it can create some difficulties in being able to plan for those infrastructure if, when people are wanting to build different things in the city, and we're saying, yeah, it kind of makes sense to do that, but if we're doing it in a way that looks arbitrary, it then becomes harder to prioritize that. So
Well,
just to reiterate all those points, expand on them a bit.
Mr. Dawson, we appreciate your time on that, and then also your comments here today. I'm going to keep us moving forward on this guy. And so thank you, Ms. Kohler. I'm going to jump down to 9D, and then we're going to take a recess here shortly. Any future agenda items requested from council?
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. What do you have?
I would like to have an update on our 311 and our digital human.
Okay. We'll do our best to get that on next agenda, 311 update and digital human. Any other requests from council? If I could, I would ask council, we're going to go ahead and move on to item 10, which is our consent agenda. I think we're going to end up pulling something off here, vote this through, take a recess for everyone, and then come back with a little more discussion on what we need to pull. Do I have anything from council that you guys would like to pull on the consent agenda?
Mayor, I'd like to pull 10I and 10P for further discussion.
Perfect. 10I and 10P will come off for further discussion.
It doesn't have to come off necessarily, but just discuss, and then maybe we can.
Okay.
Make sense.
Yeah. I think it's fine to do it that way. Does anybody else have anything that they're? Okay. Since we feel pretty confident 10I and 10P would still move forward, what we're going to do is go ahead and take a 10-minute recess. We'll come back and we'll discuss those two items, and then we'll try to push the entire consent agenda forward. If you can be back in here at 5:05. Appreciate you guys. 10I is consulting agreement for our charter amendment and governance and ends. 10P, to read this to you, is landfill tire shredding services. So I tell you what, let's start with 10P, if we're all right. Let's talk about these landfill shredding services, and then let's come back and do 10I, and we'll see if we can move forward with the consent. Mr. Hooper, go right ahead and tell us what you're working on there.
Okay, so this is for tire shredding services for the landfill, contract amount of $277,950. Just the first thing I want to say is, just so that y'all will know this, it's not something that really snuck up on us and surprised us. This is something that we've been planning for quite a while. We've budgeted for this project, and that budget was based on the historical data, some of the historical challenges that we've had with this type of project, and also resource allocation best practices as well. So the reason for this contract is that we need to clear out excess tires. We have 1,275 tons, 1,275 tons, which are above our permit limit out at the landfill. The reason for the large contract amount is because it's more beneficial for us to have a contractor mobilize one time instead of coming in several times to do a smaller amount, because the mobilization fee is pretty big for this piece of equipment. And again, this is not something that really surprised us at all. We created a roll-off program that y'all are fully aware of back in April of 22. In April of 22, we also created an alley cleanup more robust alley cleanup program, and we knew going into those programs that we were going to see a generation of waste that we were taking in at our landfill, including tires. We just didn't know how many that it would be at the particular time. So when that program first started in 22, we saw a few things start to get abused as far as our roll-offs are concerned, as far as commercial waste that was being put in those. We discussed that as staff. We also discussed it with the council at the time. And the thought was that it's not in the alleys. It's not there. The purpose is being accomplished, that we're removing the waste from the alleys. Well, in the meantime, we've continued to accumulate those tires, and probably in the last year we've seen more than we've ever seen before. And I want to talk about some of those numbers because I think it's important that you know that. By the way, there's 24 roll-offs across the city that we have at our libraries, and that's where we're seeing a lot of these tires coming from. So we have a shredder at the landfill, by the way. It's a small shredder, and its purpose was to shred the tires that would be coming in for residential people who would take out some tires, and they would pay for the core charge to have those deposited. We take in about, I've got the number for you, I'll get it to you in just a second. But that's what that was for, along with our municipal tires. Our municipal tires that come from our fleet services would go out there as well. This shredder is capable of taking care of that load, but not necessarily the load coming from our cleanup programs. So right now, we receive about 2,000 tires per year from our fleet division. That's about 166 tires per month on average, and it changes, and some of those are small, some of those are larger. We also have our residential customers that bring tires out, about 200 of those per month, and the total revenue that we've received so far this year on that since January is about $1,300. But our transfer station is where we see all the illegal dumping tires coming in, and that's from the roll-offs. That's also from our alley cleanup programs. It's also from our community combination programs where we go and help clean up, and it's also from our pilot program. And what we're seeing out there is about 2,500 a month on average that are coming in. Some months are more than others. That averages out to about 30,000 a year coming from our roll-offs and alley cleanup. Our pilot program has produced a bunch of those as well, and I've got Alan here as well. He actually went in every alley of San Jacinto, North Heights, and East Ridge when we were doing our work orders for the pilot program, and he can tell you the massive amount of tires that are in the alley. Some of those stacked up in groups that we know are being brought in by people who have small, maybe mom and pop tire shops and things like that. So with that being said, that program itself has contributed to, and I've got, can you go back to that very first slide there? That's an aerial view right now of the tires that are at the landfill. And so if you look to the far left, you can see the shredding machine that we have there just to get the size of that. Also on the right in about the center of where the tires are, there's a rectangular shape there. That's a semi-truck trailer, just to give you an idea of how, yeah, that's the semi-truck trailer right there, of how much has accumulated out there. So, you know, no good deed goes unpunished, right? So we're cleaning the alleys, we're doing all this stuff, and we're making headway on that, but we have a massive amount of tires to clean up. We also have a challenge right now with our utility workers are the ones that take care of this at the landfill. We have 5 budgeted positions for utility workers at the landfill. We average keeping about 2 of those filled. That's a $13 an hour job. We have, at the present time, we have 0 of the 5 employed at the landfill. And I want to let you know that that's not their only job. There's 2 people that would be assigned to the tires, but it would not be full-time on our shredder, like I said, to take care of the things that we take out there or that residential customers take out. Their other duties include litter control. That's on the adjacent properties, also along Indian Hill Road from I-40. They are also traffic control for all the public that's coming into the working phase. They have perimeter fence maintenance they work on, all of the mowing, removal of standing water on site, tire shredding, and brush chipping. And right now, we don't have any of the 5. So what's happening is the people that are doing any shredding at all are next in line positions, which are above that, and that's our environmental tech positions. They make a little bit more money, and we're actually working on a plan right now that we may be able to absorb a couple of those utility workers and make a few more of the environmental tech positions that pay a little bit more so that we can do a better job of handling that. But I guess the main thing for you to know is that this is something that was planned. We budgeted for this. We knew it was going to happen. We just didn't know the amount and how much it would be. But it's pretty in line with what Alan's estimate was, is what we'd probably be collecting this year. So I can try to answer questions. I know that's a lot of information, a lot of data, but I didn't want you to think that we're just, we have a tire shredder and we're just not using it. This machine, by the way, that's going to come in to do this shredding is well over $1 million, probably closer to $2 million now. They're very expensive tub grinders. They don't take the same personnel that ours takes. Ours, you have to pick the tire up by hand, load it onto the conveyor belt. Pick another one up, load it on the conveyor belt. And they can do about 300 of those a day with 2 people, and that's, you know, unless you're Jenkins. Now, Jenkins could probably do a couple thousand a day, but he won't come out there and help us. But for the utility workers that have other duties, and then you also have other things that have to happen with that as well. The large tractor tires have to be cut and quartered before they can be shredded. We also have to take rims off of tires. We have weather conditions that limit us from doing it every day. So there's a lot of factors that go into that 300 a day that really make it a hard number to gauge as to how many we could actually do with that. But we do know that it would handle what we intended for that machine to handle. We just have a large load of tires we have to take care of.
So, Donnie, do we have a plan in place to not get to this point and have to spend $750,000 or $250,000?
Yeah, we're in fact at the next council meeting we have a pretty comprehensive plan that's going to be with the pilot update that we're going to be giving you that includes a change in our roll-off plan, because we know that we just cannot continue to sustain taking in illegal dumping. I mean, and we're paying for it. That's what that cost is. It's not us that's creating that cost. It's us creating that cost by going and clean up illegal dumping, if you will. So we've got a pretty comprehensive plan that includes this piece of it as well, that I think will help with control how much of that illegal dumping we're taking in from contractors. It'll still allow the residential customers to do their thing, but we can get a better handle on contractors. Just so you know, they're filling up probably 60% of our roll-offs now. It's coming from contractors. We even had to clear out I don't know how to describe this, Alan, you may have better words than me, but half a roll-off full of raw meat and sausage, and it was terrible, and that came from a restaurant somewhere. So they're being abused. Not surprising. We kind of knew that was going to happen, but we do have a plan to address that.
Okay, so we have a plan to address that. Do we have a plan to stay on top of even the residential tires that come in 300 a day? I get it's a staffing issue, is what you said.
No, we can.
I think we have 0.
Yeah, and I think we can handle that. I mean, that's what that program is designed for,
right? I mean,
we have. It's just this is the excess that's coming in on top of that. In fact, before 22, you could go out there and we could probably pull aerials and look at the footprint. It was so much smaller because it was just those things that were coming in that were pretty controlled.
So the tire shredder that we do have, it's been used.
Oh, absolutely. 22. Yeah, we're still using it. When we have time to stick an environmental tech on there, we're using it. Absolutely.
Okay. So it comes down to a staffing issue and the illegal dumping.
Staffing issues and the multitude of tires that are out there compared to what we would normally take in. Okay. Based on illegal dumping, yes.
Okay. But we've got a plan moving forward. I mean, we talked about, it seems like throwing money at something like you said, it's a budgeted item. I mean, you saw this since 2022, but we've got a plan in place to hopefully curb the illegal dumping, but then also maybe staffing
I think so. I'm looking forward to that presentation because I think we've spent a lot of time. This pilot has been very valuable to us. We've learned a lot of things, and I think we're going to be able to put a more comprehensive approach to tackling. We do a really good job of cleaning it up. We don't do a very good job of preventing it, and I think this plan will do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions, council? Hey, Donnie, I got a quick one. I've been contacted twice from companies that wanted these tires. They were applying. It looked like they were applying for some sort of grant. And then there was a recycling component to this, maybe an energy usage or something like that. Nothing's ever come back to me. Has that totally gone away, or are those companies still intending to come here that would see that these tires are of value to them? They would take them from us?
I think there's still an interest in that. We haven't heard anything in a while on that either, but I'm glad you brought that up because one of the bonuses of this company doing this is that a lot of them will not go into our landfill. They will be taking these with them. Now, they won't take the full amount because they're only going to take the amount that they can recycle once they're shredded. But that saves us airspace. When you put dollars to that, it makes up a big difference of that money that's being spent because if we shred all of them, they have to go into the landfill. But we can reach back out and find out. I don't know if you know anything else about that or not at this time, but.
Yes, sir. The only thing I know is the contractor that's doing the work for us, like Donnie mentioned, they do have a stream for reusing some of the product. I don't know at this point, especially since we haven't engaged them since bids were open, how much they plan on taking and using, but any amount that they do is better than what we could do. I did receive a report last year through PRPC about a facility that was going to open up near Shamrock. Since that time, I have not heard any updates on that, but I can look into it.
Yeah, we would love that. And then if you haven't been looking for grants, I think that there is something available that they were going after. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe the grant funding's not there. But obviously, if we're having to pay to dispose of them and there's a grant application out there, I'd love to go after it.
Okay. Thank you, Alan. I might note, too, the trailer that's parked out there, that is part of another program that we have with State Tire out of Denver City. Yeah, Denver City. They place a trailer out there. We fill that trailer up and they haul it off and recycle it. We pay them a transportation fee to do that. But it's one trailer. They get it about once a month, and it doesn't make much of a dent in what we're doing.
Understood.
So we'll continue to explore that.
Okay. Anything else for Mr. Hooper? Okay. Appreciate you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you. Let's jump over to 10I, consulting agreement. Mr. Hartman, you want to walk us into that one, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So yes, there's been a number of questions related to the procurement of this. Basically, this is a procurement under public procurement law of professional services. So the first thing that you do is you identify qualifications. So this company, specifically the team that they recommended and they sent in that email, Al Zielinski and the others, it was based off qualifications. And this is looking at your charter and your governance and ends policy. So this is a heavy load of governance. So when we're looking at this, there's processes in place. You've seen it. You've already experienced professional services related to development of your orientation and your mission statements. This kind of falls into that area. So when you look at those skills and qualifications required for this, this is related to knowing that you're going to have a committee. In advance of having a committee, you look at a committee that's going to be targeted from your goal and objective of looking at the charter. So that is one component of that contract. The other component is the governance and ends, which is heavy on governance and policy direction. But remember, that goes a lot to the interaction between a city manager, city council, and how things go forward. So both of these have that governance component of qualifications. Related to that, they submitted staff and made those available to me. Those were evaluated. Once you identify the qualifications, then you go to the cost of the services in the negotiation. We did that. I got to that point, the $49,000. It does not have to come before City Council. We brought that for transparency. The $25 is pretty close to the limit that requires it to come. So it's just a courtesy of transparency saying this is on there and this is why they were chosen. there's a whole bunch of this where their broad range of experiences are valuable to the process. And what I would challenge you is, Councilmember Tips wasn't at the meeting, but at the initial meeting, they brought and showed, demonstrated that broad range of experience related to how this is going to structure what changes would you want in a charter? What changes do you want in a governance and ends? And when you think you want this changes, they give you a third party, an outside perspective of what those changes will do and impact, and can advise you on that. So they were identified under all that as the most qualified. Are there opportunities to say there's others that can do it? Yes. If I go get a legal view only, I'm limited to that. If you want my view, you know my background's in utilities. I'm going to give you a infrastructure utilities background on these topics. We all are a product of our experiences, and they have a team that's assembled that very much can be beneficial for council, staff, the committee, and our community, ultimately serving what we identified as that delivery of efficient local government services at the end. So you start at the global goal of efficient local government services and how that comes through your charter, through your governance and ends. Do we want them for more? We don't know that once we get through these processes. But they have the resources to do it. They're qualified to do it. I know there's questions about some others. Do I want an academic view? Of course I would like an academic view. My education is invaluable to me to be standing here today. But that's not the sole look that I want for this, for y'all. What y'all transmitted to me was a goal and objective for that efficient delivery of government services. This is a relationship thing related to their experience and knowledge, their ability to advise. Are there more specific things I can provide for you at this time?
You know, talking to a citizen just a while ago, I mean, the remark was made that maybe we're doing something shady up here. So I would ask you, were you given direction from council to hire this firm?
No.
So we had nothing to do with hiring this firm.
No.
This
is a staff-evaluated process whereby you gave us the goals and objectives to help find somebody to help us, a consultant to help us with charter and governance and ends.
Okay. I just wanted to clear that up. So, and there were some questions as to, you know, why we chose this firm, and you just walked us through that they have the skills, the abilities that we need, and why not local, or why not, you know.
Yeah, this is a different product than most of your locals, and disciplines come into play. Do I want an attorney look at it? Do I want an academic look at it? Same challenges you have with staff running it. Do you want existing city management with my experience looking at it, Andrew's management experience, our existing city attorney experience? This gives you a different view of it and options for someone else to answer questions from a different perspective that I would have, that current staff would have, and provide the opportunity for that committee to ask the same questions. Now, that committee, there are members of that committee that could lead this process. That committee is an outstanding committee for this, in my opinion, representative of your community and the needs that you're going to have to address what you would like to address in a charter and in the governance and ends. We already have a lot of work done on what the challenges are in governance and ends, and they can take it and provide those options when you start writing things related to what you want to accomplish in a governance and ends. So I think both of them, they're very qualified. They met the qualifications identified. This was a staff-driven process.
Okay. Thank you, Floyd.
Other questions I could answer?
So in the governance and ends policy, it says they were developed sometime in 2014, 15?
A combination of things. I think officially governance and ends, if I'm not mistaken, in about 16 to 17, somewhere in that range. It became governance and ends. It had a preceding resolution that had the guidance in it, but then the governance and ends piece, I think, came to fruition with that name in the 16-17 range.
And then kind of a major revision in 19?
Somewhere in that neighborhood, 19.
And who was involved in that?
Same process. Council was heavily involved in it, with staff heavily involved. But those were led with typically with a consultant. And at that time, I believe SGR, it was local. Okay, there was a local, but pieces of this, when you go in, orientations and emission statements, as SGR has been involved in the past. So there's been different ones. That's right. Now I remember. It was a local, academic-based, wasn't it? Yes, academic-based consultant.
So this will be the first time that we probably have somebody, I mean, the academic person was local, but
yes,
but now we're getting somebody from the outside to be able to also kind of take a look at these from a possible different perspective.
First time that I'm aware of, when the resolution was made prior to the 2016-17, I'm not sure what the processes were there. I was in the organization, but I wasn't at the level to have firsthand knowledge of how that worked. So, but I do see the value of, in the first meeting, I saw a lot of value of their expertise and knowledge, being able to answer questions and say, if then, in the question and answering process, this is what you're going to get. And that's what I saw in the qualifications that they brought to the table, was their broad range of experience, and the team's broad range of experience that they have gives us opportunities for, well, how does it work in other places with different things? And if you want to change this piece of the charter or the governance and ends, this is the outcome that you'll get. And so I just see that as matching what I heard from the council in goals and objectives to manage this and guide or advise, whatever word you want to use. One word doesn't exactly describe the relationship that they're going to have, because you'll see them establish those goals and objectives with the committee in that first meeting. But governance and ends, that's established with you as they interact with you. And that started in that first meeting. Okay?
So one word that you would not use is they're not brought in to steer. They're here to guide or advise, not to steer.
Advise would be the better word. Guide, I would say, provide their advice and input from their experiences. We've had other committees operate like this. PDP had a engineering firm that had that, but they moved from engineering back into advice and guidance. So it's been done, but one discipline, whether it's academic, legal, or that, was probably not what I heard we wanted. We want a broad experience and an ability to understand impacts of recommended changes.
Okay.
Well, and I think both of these consultants actually, I mean, they have city government experience.
Very much.
They've been sitting in the seats that are in this room.
Yes, and this company has additional resources to help through that process if it becomes necessary.
Anything further? Sure. Thank you, Mr. Hartman.
Thank you.
Appreciate the additional. Anything further on consent, gentlemen? Would ask for a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
You just left me hanging.
No, sir.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to our non-consent agenda, item 11A. This shows to be a public hearing. We have Mr. Kendrick coming up here to walk us into this. Afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This first item is a public hearing and first reading to consider the vacation of a public alley that is in the city. This alley is located in the vicinity of Amarillo Boulevard and North Taylor Street in Block 192 of Glidden and Sanborn Edition. And the applicant is OJD Engineering for Joel Favela Jr. And the proposal for the vacation of this alley or the reason why they're requesting it, is they want to develop the site with a convenience store and basically unify the block into one site. Additionally, Amarillo National Bank, who is at the south end of the block, they have a potential future project they are looking at doing that is of similar nature. So they voiced support for the request, as well as they would potentially benefit from that in the future as well. The request was reviewed by the typical city departments and local utility companies. And the only thing that came up was there are utilities in this alley, so the applicant is going to retain a public utility easement over those utilities. That way they can remain there and be serviced in the future if needed. And additionally, the applicant will be also dedicating a new alley easement segment that will go back to the west and connect in with the street over there. Until that is constructed, they are going to provide a temporary one over a portion of their lot that is paved with concrete. That way, city services and the public can continue to use that alley. The reason that the north segment is not being vacated is that there was a property owner at the north end of the block, the northwest corner, the fast food restaurant that did not participate in the vacation request, so we did not want to cut off their alley service, and as they did not respond to requests for comment on this, so that is why we are maintaining that segment at the north. That way we are not negatively impacting them. We did send public notices on this, and the only comment we got was the support from Amarillo National Bank at the south end. And other than that, our Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of this request with a unanimous vote.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Kendrick before we have a public hearing?
It doesn't make much sense to me to have part of an alley and not the whole alley. I mean, I don't know why we would want to give up our land. We have an alleyway that goes all the way to Amarillo Boulevard, is that correct?
Yes, currently it goes from north to south through the entire block. That is correct.
And the street to the west is a one-way going south, is that correct?
I don't recall which way it goes, I'll be honest with you.
I think it goes to the south. So in other words, you got people going down an alleyway 3/4, but then they got to make a left-hand turn. Then they've got to go back south, make another block, come around to go to the north end. Just for one business, correct?
Yes, our biggest concern of leaving that segment at the north end was just currently they utilize city trash service in that alley, and there's access way for that lot onto there. And typically on these alley vacation requests, we like to see the entirety of the block participate. And we were just concerned with negatively impacting that property if we were to vacate their alley without them being a participant in the request. So that's the reason why we left that short segment up at the north end of the alley in place.
I don't know how many citizens use that alley to get to the north, but it seemed like we would be putting our citizens out of their way if we do that. And for the reason, I mean, what is the actual reasoning for this area that we're wanting to vacate?
Oh, the reason the vacation was submitted was you basically have a developer that's wanting to develop a convenience store that utilizes the entirety of that, most of that block of land. And whenever you have an alley in the middle like that, that makes that pretty unfeasible. So they're basically wanting to join that block as one large, well, essentially two large lots, if you will, one for Amarillo National at the south end and then the future convenience store kind of in the central part of that block.
So like any good engineering drawing, it says a whole lot to people that look at engineering plans. It may not really communicate the effect here. The effect is instead of driving north down an alley, you would drive north through the parking lot. And so you're not going to lose the opportunity to drive or transport, east to west, north, south, but then you're going to navigate through parking and parking spaces versus having an alleyway. And then the one further to the north, not real consequential if I'm driving through a parking lot and then can continue through that alleyway, would be different if they were the only participating member and it was vice versa. And you really are driving down an alley now, and then you got to navigate your way through a parking lot to get to the street. It would make less sense that way. Does the parking side of it, now that you can see the parking spaces and The fuel canopy, I guess I would take you to Toot and Totem there at, 9th, Buchanan. So in the way in which, you may turn into that and drive across that parking lot to get back to the southbound street, this may function a lot the same.
Didn't we used to have to, on an alley, didn't you need to own both sides of that to claim the alley?
Yes, typically the people that are requesting vacation are owners along the alley. In this case, the owners that is requesting the vacation does own the properties on both sides of this alley.
So you have fuel station and convenience store there in the center, and then bank to the south, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Amarillo National Bank at the south also owns the property on both sides of the alley. And typically, if this process is approved, it would be conveyed to owner. The alley is split essentially 50-50 to the owners on both sides of it, which in this case, the entirety of that 20 feet adjacent to those properties will go to the same entity, if you will.
So to argue the other side of it, from a building standpoint, kind of property rights perspective, if I'm the business and I buy both of this, why, what I'm utilizing as a parking lot, why do I have to continue to have an alley with, city maintenance coming through the middle of my parking lot? If I'm willing to improve the property and maintain it all, why not vacate the alley? Well, the only real reason would be, would you prevent access anywhere? And I think the OJD plan shows that it doesn't prevent access, it just, requires them to drive through a private parking lot versus having an alleyway now.
Yep, that's essentially correct. Mm-hmm.
Is the city receiving any compensation for this property?
Not on this one, since they are providing us with a public utility easement and a future alley easement. Essentially, since if they were not doing that, they would owe us compensation. But since they are providing us with a public utility easement and alley access easement, essentially for free as part of this request, we do not require compensation in this case.
Aren't they basically? It's their utilities.
So these are city water and sewer mains that are in this alley, in addition to some franchise utility company utilities that are in this alley. So they will be able to get taps off of those mains, but they are city mains that are currently in the alley.
My councilman brings up a great point. Mm-hmm. Are they asking for any incentives on the other side?
Not that I'm aware of. They have not expressed that.
Does staff know of anything that would be a request from the city? Are we giving an alley and then we also have any kind of other incentive requests? No? Okay. I think in the way in which, if I could look at this as like, okay, you're going to improve the property, add jobs, increase sales tax, maybe you're not offering to buy the alley from the city, but then we also are the benefactor from what we would hope would be economic incentive or growth. So we're covering them, okay? And anything further, feel free. Any other questions from council? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kendrick.
Sure, no
At this
problem.
time, we're going to open a public hearing. Do I have anyone here that would like to speak for or against this item? Seeing no one, I will close our public hearing on item 11A and would ask for a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion. We accept ordinance 8132 as stated.
Second.
I have a motion and a second from place two, on item 11A, and I appreciate the good discussion on it, that we're digging in, making sure we're not making a mistake.
Appreciate that.
With no further discussion, would ask all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes. Moving right along to item 11B, another public hearing. Mr. Kendrick, back to you.
All right, this is a rezoning, this public hearing. This is the first reading to consider the rezoning of Lot 7, Block 14, amended Quail Creek Edition number 28. And this is located in Potter County in the vicinity of Lowe's Lane and Amarillo Boulevard. And the applicant is Amarillo Recreational Storage, LLC, and they are proposing the rezone from Plan Development District 339 to Plan Development District 339A to develop the site with a RV storage warehouses, and uses allowed in light commercial district. And the original intent of this plan development was when they developed the Lowe's there, some of those out parcels were served by access easements versus public streets. So that's part of the reason why that plan development was done, in addition to some signage requirements that they were wanting. But essentially, it allows for all uses allowed in light commercial. The two components of this that weren't allowed in light commercial were the RV storage and the mini storage warehouses that they're essentially wanting to sell in a condominium regime. That way somebody could have a personal little storage building or place to store classic cars, things of that nature. That's kind of what they're targeting with those storage warehouses that are shown there on the site plan. As part of the plan development, they did submit this site plan and it went through the review process with city staff to ensure it complied with all typical standards. And they did meet all typical codes. They are providing landscaping in accordance with the city landscape ordinance. They are providing some increased setbacks and screening fences along the perimeter of the site to buffer any potential impacts from the neighboring office district, especially to the west and that. They are providing parking in typical accordance with the city parking ordinance. And regarding the future land use map category for this area, it does conform with the category. This area is a little unique in the way that it developed. This section of land did not develop in terms of, with a typical neighborhood unit concept. Essentially, a good majority of this section developed of non-residential land uses. So from that perspective, it doesn't technically conform with the neighborhood unit concept, but given the way that area has developed in terms of the zoning and development patterns in that area, staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission did feel that it was an appropriate fit for the area. We did send public notices as required by state law. No comments were received on this item, and the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval with a unanimous vote.
Any questions for Mr. Kendrick on 11B? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll open a public hearing on item 11B. Do I have anyone that would like to speak for or against this item? We'll go ahead and close our public hearing on item 11B and ask for a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8133 as presented in the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. With no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes. We'll move right along to item 11C. Yes, sir, Chief Harbin, or I shouldn't say Chief, I should say Marshal Harbin, correct?
Yes.
If you'll take us and walk us through this, I know we got a few questions and would love to get your update.
Okay. So we are looking at consideration of ordinance 8134. This will adjust multiple sections of code with a primary impact which will be on 10216, which directly is related to the fire marshal. However, I want to go ahead and point out that ordinance 8084 is not yet codified, and it does exist, which will be changing section 10216. So there'll be a lot of the references we're actually talking about ordinance 8084, but it all will impact that section of the code. So a few things, the three things we're trying to accomplish with this is authority. So when the city marshal was separated from the fire department, all the authority of the fire marshal was placed under the city marshal. Now that we've separated those two departments and the fire marshal is back under the fire department, this is designed to be able to regain that authority back to the fire marshal's office. We're looking at flexibility. Part of this has to do with the adopting of the 2021 IFC code, which was part of that 8084 ordinance. With that, the city has the authority to make amendments. There were several amendments that were adopted. We've noticed in practice that some of those aren't practical, and we're looking to go ahead and include some exceptions that already exist within the code to give some more flexibility to some builders and as well as the fire marshal's office to be able to navigate those situations without having to issue a variance. And then we're looking to make some adjustments to the fee structure. Sorry, I skipped way ahead in my bill here. So I think that pretty much highlights as far as the flexibility with 8084. On the fee structure, one of the things we're trying to do is provide clarity with that fee structure. We're wanting to break that down into the three most common types of requests that come in through the fire marshal's office. We're wanting to be able to add additional information so that as customers look online, they can be able to get clarity on when and how those fees are applied. And then we are looking to make a few adjustments in those fee structures. Primarily, we want to add flexibility so that we see a fee that's relatable as far as the scope of work that's required on for the project. So if we have a flat fee of a certain amount of money, it can expand as the project requires more work from our staff. So those are the primary things that we're trying to accomplish through that. And I think that sums it up if you all have any questions.
We appreciate the overview. I have just a couple, but I would ask if council has anything on their side on this updated ordinance. Questions from council?
I'm trying to scroll through here and find it, but do you know off the top of your head the biggest fee structure increase amount across the board? Do you know?
I would say
like $100 or $50 or.
I know that the haunted house sticks out, and we can run through those real quick. I did put those on there. I apologize. So on the operational, I think the biggest one that's going to would stand out would be the haunted house. It's going to double. It's originally $100. It's going to go to $200. The reason for that is those are actually fairly complex. Due to the nature of those, they're actually designed to be kind of a maze. They can present some egress issues, so we end up sending several staff over there, and it takes several hours oftentimes to go through that. So we're just trying to ensure that that's flexible and kind of meets those demands. Let me go back through. I apologize. For occupancy inspections, the two primary fee structures that we see are the other facility and occupancies. We're going to see that increase by $50 with some related increases based on square footage. Once again, we're trying to ensure that those are expandable to meet the required workload on the office. Hotel and apartment inspections, this typically was a flat fee of $200. What we'd like for this to be is kind of fair and equitable depending on the nature and size of those businesses. So what we did is we came down to a $100 standard fee, and once again that would expand based on the square footage. For construction permitting and inspections, we added a fee of $100 for fire alarm installations that are less than 25 devices. That didn't exist before. So we've added that. Other than that, those are staying the same. The fire sprinkler systems, we added a fee of $100 for 19 or less. That did not exist before. We have the final fire inspection. We have left that base at $50 for a final fire inspection for certificate of occupancy, but we did allow for expansion of that based on the square footage. And then on the operational permitting, we're doing away with the operational application fee. This was not something that was typically collected through the office anyway. It just didn't make a lot of sense. We have added some standby personnel fees. All this is a mechanism for us to be transparent in what that will cost if we need to provide FMO or fire department resources based on an event or an operational permit request. We spoke to the amusement permit. Temporary membrane structures the same way. We just wanted that to be expandable. So if we have large structures that may come in, we can have that fee be expanded to meet that demand. Special events is probably the most significant change, although I don't think that we're going to see a significant increase in revenue per se. What we're trying to do is we're trying to actually add criteria that help us navigate what should be a priority for our office. This was pretty much just a standard fee for any special event in the past. We don't necessarily want to go after small events or things like that. There's not really a requirement or a need for us. So what we've done is we've set that criteria at 11 or more cooking stations, or if they're going to have 2,500 or more people within a calendar day. That way it can kind of flag our department, and then we can do the appropriate inspections and things needed to take care of that. We also divvied that up so that there's a host fee for the person hosting the event, and then a fee based on those cooking locations or those vendors.
Can I ask on the building permit side, will those fees be taken care of in the permit application fee and the payment for that? Or would that require the general contractor to pay a separate fee at the end of the job?
So there would be a separate fee for that final fire inspection. That was introduced in 8084 to be able to collect that fee. There is a permit application fee, and then there's fees per system that's placed in or that's being included in that request. And then there would be that final fire inspection fee to navigate that inspection. For
I'm just thinking of ease of use for our customers. So if you have a general contractor pulling a permit for $10,000 for a large commercial building, and it includes all of those inspections. Yours is one that they're going to know, hey, we've got a call, we've got to get the fire marshal here. Can you be incorporated in that same bill so that this general contractor isn't having to go and track down that separate bill, pay the fire marshal's office or fire department separately? Have we looked at that?
So I assume you're talking about like to include building safety and other departments that are, so what we're doing is we are looking to move to the MGO or the digital platform, because right now we're still kind of old school. You have to send in a check or come by the office to pay those fees. So we are working to navigate that. We haven't specifically looked into combining with building safety or any of those as far as how those fees are collected. That's certainly something we would be willing to do if we felt like the city could navigate that.
I think for the business owner or the contractor, it would be a nice ease of use to get all of your cost up front, pay for everything, and then it's just a phone call to have you come and perform versus an additional, well, let me get back to the office and get you your, well, I have to, download a different app or pay a separate way. So I don't think the $100 is the big issue on $1 million building. I think it's the customer service side, probably more so.
The process,
of,
yes.
Well, why couldn't that have been included in my permit package, when I submit it? And so if you guys are doing the permit review, if everything's coming in through that process, if you could catch it on the front end, and I'm not saying we have to streamline it from department to department, maybe it stands alone, but could those be issued simultaneously, even if I've got to write a check, can join those together? So if staff could look into that, I think that'd be very helpful. Any other questions, Councilman?
Chief, just off the top of your head, I was looking here in the standby fee. Whenever we do the fireworks standby for the baseball stadium, are we charging them, or is that free, or how does
I believe that there's a contract with the city that we don't specifically charge. That money, I think, is reimbursed back to the department, or those fees are covered. But I believe there's a contract with Hodgetown that prevents us from billing them specifically for the standby coverage.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other questions from council?
How many, do we have a lot of haunted houses?
We don't have a lot of haunted houses. I do know there's a handful that we do every year. And it's not so much, I think our goal is for us to be as kind of transparent, have line items for things that do exist. Some of those are not, typically popular fees, but they are fees that come into the office, and we're just trying to get those in line with the scope of work and the man hours that are committed.
And I guess for those people that are repeat customers, because I guess the haunted house has got to be inspected, or the amusement is once a year?
It's typically a 30-day permit when they apply. So when they come in, we'll do, and that typically gets them through their season for the haunted house.
So how will we notify them about the change? And then when they call and say, why is it going up double what I'm paying, how do we, or that's one example, but how do we explain this to the community as to why we're altering the charges?
So we're working on some internal documents for the city to be able to put out to most of these vendors. We do have some relationships and worked with in the past to be sure and notify them of the upcoming changes and what to expect.
That's a good question. When will this go into effect?
So obviously the ordinance, when you guys read it in, would passed with your approval, but we did specifically make note in there that any fee changes would not be in effect until October 1 of 2024.
Okay. Well, let me come back to that after I ask you about 503 and 903.
Okay.
So I'm probably not interpreting this correctly, and it may be a different section of the code that I'm thinking of. But 503.1.1, building and facilities, so it says approved fire apparatus access roads provided for every facility. And it's talking about 150 feet. So I've had one individual that reached out that said that was being interpreted on the hose lay of the 400 length from the hydrant. So you have a fire hydrant that has to be within 400 feet of the building. Is that correct?
Depending on the structure and whether it's sprinklered, can adjust that, but between 400 to 600 feet of the building. And then
Okay.
typically the hose lay of the 150 foot has to be able to reach to any point within the building from the fire access road.
So in the fire access road, what I'm envisioning is like if that's a hammerhead fire lane, you got to be able to pull that truck up to the right-hand side, and 150 feet off of that truck has to be able to reach all the way around to the building on either side of the hammerhead or the fire lane. Is that?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
So is that a change in what the footage used to be, or has that always been the 150 feet?
I believe I'd have to certainly get with my staff to follow up on that, but I believe the 150 does hold over from 2012, which is what we had previous IFC.
So maybe we're getting, or they're getting maybe they're getting confused in what the 400-foot hose lay is from the fire hydrant versus the 150 feet. This fire apparatus, fire truck, correct?
Yes.
Okay, 150-foot access provided for every facility, building, portion of the building. Okay, yeah, I think that is just a misunderstanding on our side, or their side. Let me go to 903.2, which is automatic fire sprinkler system. This one was also questioned in the way in which the fire riser could not be in another storage area, which, is pretty common. So I have a utility closet that has a mop sink, and it's got, a fire alarm system for the data controls, and it's also got a fire riser, and it stays locked. Would this have any effect on requiring the fire riser to be held specifically in a closet by itself? Do we have to dedicate a space?
Yes, I believe this was part of the amendments that came out in 8084, and that does require that the riser is in a separate, I believe it's got to be a 36 square foot, and it can only have fire protection systems within that. But that is a local amendment, I believe, in excess of 2021's IFC.
Okay. So the way that I'm reading that, I don't see it in here, but I'm only reading it, now and last night. So it's talking about elevator machine spaces, pits, elevator pit areas. And I could see the life safety issue in an elevator pit, totally different scenario than a storage closet. Do we have a life safety concern that we would share with this updated code that would not allow for some latitude on behalf of the fire marshal?
I think there's certainly potential for that. I think the impetus behind that, it's my understanding this was, prior to us taking over the fire marshal's office, but it was my understanding that had to do with typically it was hard to enforce. So on inspections, when they would go in there, it was hard to access and hard to provide maintenance for those systems. And it's my understanding that's where that originated from. But that's certainly something, at your direction, we're happy to go back and look into.
Yeah, let me just read this. Building code not less than 2 hours. So I don't have an interpretation on the exception, but it looks like you've covered it. So if this says, 903 says, in an elevator storage area, an elevator pit area, no exceptions, you're not allowed to put your fire riser equipment in there. This has to be elevator machinery, no storage allowed, so they're trying to separate that. I think if you've got an elevator, it's a totally different setup.
Yes, sir.
But if you're looking at any commercial building that has a closet area that's going to be, say, access for the roof, fire riser, electrical equipment, things like that, this exception, spaces or areas in telecommunication buildings used exclusively for telecommunications, doesn't really speak to like a general retail building, strip center, anything like that. But we are looking for something here to carve out an exception. And I don't know if this needs to be done, but I think this is probably the one area that I've learned the hard way in little things that seem pretty minuscule that hit my building community in kind of a heavy-handed way, where it's just that extra thing of, so now I've got to build a whole closet. I've got to dedicate a whole area and add another exterior door that goes to this one area. So would you be comfortable with taking no action on this, looking at that one item? And then this way, we're really making sure that as we're setting up our new fire marshal's office and you guys are really getting out there, we don't miscommunicate to our building community that we're going to be heavy-handed in any way. It's very common sense, but it's also life safety.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
No, and I'm totally on board for that. We can explore that.
Yeah, so if you're good with that, I think I'm great with that. That really is the only concern that I have is that one fire closet area.
Okay.
Anything else for our fire marshal?
Appreciate you.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks for the opportunity, Mayor, Council.
And I think it's a short thing for you to look into. If it's got to go back anywhere, take it, and then I think we'd be ready to take action on it as soon as you bring it back.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Council, I could ask for a motion. We could table item 11C and take it off the table later, or we could choose to take no action on this. Any preference on this? She says no action. So City Secretary appreciates, or our Secretary appreciates no action here today. Council, any issue with taking no action on 11C?
No, sir. No.
Okay. We will move on to item 11D. Miss Johnny Glick.
We have had a few resignations from a few of our boards, so we are asking for mid-year appointments to avoid quorum issues. We're going to start with the Library Advisory Board. The member who resigned was recently appointed in November, so we are essentially filling a full term. We have several applications on file already, and then we received one after this board member resigned as well. Would you like me to read the application or applicants to you, or do you have ideas if you may want to nominate?
Mayor, could I make a request on this issue?
Yes, sir.
It may lead to the other one. Would it be possible for us to maybe give 2 more weeks before we make a decision on this? And the reason why I'm asking is to make sure that we get the word out to the public that these openings are available. Getting our Office of Innovation Engagement to maybe say we have these 2 that are open, to give people at least a little bit of time to apply for it that maybe didn't apply the first time around. Because I think the same would be. I actually had someone that was interested in being on animal welfare and management, but only recently found out that we had a vacancy. So making sure that we get word out to the community of these vacancies and giving them a pretty short timeline if they are interested. But if it wouldn't hinder things too much, to maybe allow the public one more chance to apply and get the word out, and then maybe in 2 weeks, maybe come back to the possibility of looking at that.
Yes, sir. So let's ask, do we have some urgency on any of these 3 positions where the board is not able to meet, but they're scheduled?
You're fine.
I know Animal Welfare and Management was to meet yesterday, but we already don't have a quorum on that, so that meeting is
Meet tomorrow, actually, and then we didn't have enough for a quorum with, we had only, and to speak to notification of the public, we had only received at the end of last week the notification that they resigned.
All right.
And we were just trying to fill that, so.
But our next meeting will be mid-June, so if we do it on the 28th, that would, in 2 weeks, we would be able to have someone at that meeting.
Well, my question would be on any of these boards, do we have alternates that are being recommended?
We do have a recommendation, I would be the same recommendation that we made back in November, and that would be Mr. Clark.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you guys say is you don't have any urgency, anything that's going to cause us to need to take action today. However, you do have recommendations. I would like to hear the recommendations, and then I think I'd like to go back to Councilmember Simpson and see, based on that, what we want to do going forward.
So we'll just start with the Library Advisory Board. The recommendation for the appointment of this member is Courtney White. And Amanda may want to add more information to that. She's familiar with the library board and the city's processes, and so we think she'd be a great fit.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Would you want to come up and tell us anything on your end?
So my recommendation for Courtney came about because she has been serving as our legal liaison when she was in the position of assistant city attorney. She was with us for 7 years, so is very familiar with our policies and procedures at the library. And her knowledge of Robert's Rules of Order, Open Meetings Act was very reassuring, especially to the newer board members as they came on. And she is a regular patron. Her card is in good standing, and she comes to our programs as a private citizen. So that's why I felt she was a good fit.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Do you have any questions, council member? Okay. Before we move on to the other two, which you guys have listed, the recommendations, or maybe you don't. Maybe I'm the only one seeing it. On item 11D, since we're being advised that we're not under any urgency, and we have a good recommendation. Is there action that? Well, no, I don't think we'd want to do that. Councilman Simpson, tell me what your preference would be.
Well, my preference would be to let the public know that we have these two openings at this time, and set a deadline for an application, which could even be at the end of next week. I don't want to hold it up any more than 2 weeks. But just to say we've got openings, because someone that may not have known about it before may be interested in applying at this point, just to let people know that this is out there again. And I wouldn't want to hold it up any more than 2 weeks, so it's a pretty concise deadline. But just to let people know these openings are out there, giving them a chance to apply, and maybe, that we set things in motion so we can get those applications and interests in time for our meeting on the 28th.
So, Mrs. Glick, I think what we would say is May 23rd would be the latest that we would want this in order to put it on the agenda on the 24th for the 28th meeting. And we would know we'd be bringing this back with potentially the same recommendations for all three positions.
One thing I might suggest is that we've kept all of the applications that we received last October, essentially, on file, and we will open these applications again next September. So whenever we're doing it yearly, and so we're not excluding people, but we are it was just to make it quick. But we can easily open those applications again and continue.
Mayor, I mentioned on the combination board, that actually comes from the Construction Advisory and Appeals Commission, so there's no new members on that. It has come from the existing members.
Yeah, so I think we could take action on 11E.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for that, Mr. Freeman. I think, and then the recommendation there, is good by this council, I'm sure. Did you have something, Councilman?
Yeah, why don't we do these boards appoint an alternate so we don't have to do this regularly? I think every board should have an alternate so that if we have somebody drop off, we got somebody already there so that would answer Councilman Simpson's program too, that we open it up. Maybe we can have an alternate in there as well.
I'm not opposed.
To study that in light of all the boards. Some of them already have alternates, some don't, some have statutory requirements, but we could do that. We could look at that for you.
I mean, evidently, these three do not have alternates because we're having to appoint somebody today or in 2 weeks.
Councilman Kraft, what did you have, sir?
No, I'm just telling Councilman Shirley I'm not opposed to that idea.
Okay. So we'll ask staff to look into as many of these boards as we can that would function to have a legitimate alternate. Some of them, you struggle to get the members that are qualified just for the board, so we may not have the option on an alternate, but on like library board, maybe we could have had an alternate on that one, and that would save a step. Let's ask if you could post and then contact for the next 9 days. Putting that deadline there and then put it back on the 28th agenda for item 11D and 11F.
Gotcha.
And then I would like you to go to 11E.
Absolutely. And this position does have to be pulled from the Construction Advisory and Appeals Commission. So, and I would like to add that CAC also has an alternate. We haven't heard back from that alternate whether they would like to be reappointed, but we do have a member on the board already, or on the home board already, that is willing to be added to the sub-board as well. And that person is Russ Glaze.
So on item 11E, do I have any discussion questions for Mrs. Glick about Russ Glaze, his background, or why he sits on that board?
Why does he sit on the board?
He sits on the board because he's insurance, correct?
That's correct. He is an insurance.
And I remember Mayor Stanley actually nominated him a couple of years ago to sit on that board. So, and he was willing to come and be a full member.
Was extremely leery of a guy who works for State Farm. But other than that, it's panned out pretty good. Russ is a great individual and showing up to meetings, doing his job, willing to sit on this board as well. So I think we would be pretty safe to take action on item 11E.
Well, I'll make a motion to appoint Russ Glaze to the vacated position and Mr. Huseman remain as an alternate member
Of the Condemnation Appeals
of
Commission.
the Condemnation Appeals Commission.
Perfect.
Okay, I have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that item passes, and then we will take no action on item 11D and 11F and wait for those to come back at next meeting.
We'll bring those back to you next time.
Really good. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Would ask for one more.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned. Gabbled it in, man. I'm going to get some more fun every time.